This is Dan dos Santos from Mighty Colors. Thanks for joining us, and hopefully everybody can hear and see us okay. I'm really honored to be joined by Marc Scheff today. Marc, thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me, Dan. Great to see you, man.
Good to see you. It's always good to see you. Looking handsome as always. We've known each other for quite a long time, and I think in that time,
15 years now. Yeah.
Are you kidding me? 15?
2009, June.
Oh my God. Oh my God. We're
basically married.
I think in that time, very akin to myself, I think you think a lot about the science behind making art and the science of creativity and excelling at things. As long as I've known you, you've always been into fitness and how that's correlated to things. And I think the result is I've seen you go from mentee to mentor in a remarkably short period of time, like much shorter than most people, I think. You want to start off and tell us a little bit about that journey and how you got here and what you're doing today?
Yeah, I'll try to make it short. The truth is, like, what I'm doing now, and this is some of the stuff that I work with people on. What I'm doing now, like I couldn't have predicted at any point along the way or said, oh, I'm at the illustration masterclass, so this is the path I'm going to take. But what I'm doing now really does sort of take everything that I've done and is kind of finally putting it all together at age 47. But yeah, so I mean, let's start with we met. It was 2009, and this gets into some of the mindset stuff because I'll tell this sort of fun version of the story. Is I was here in New York. I just moved here, living with my I think we just gotten married, and there was a conference. Not we. No, my wife and I got married. We got married much later. No, my wife and I got married, and I just remember there was a conference in, there was a conference in Dallas. It was one of the massive Black conferences, and and I was sort of hesitating. I was like, I don't know if I should go. All the inner critic stuff, all the mindset stuff. And my wife is like, you should absolutely go. Like, you never know. Like, you'll go. Like, who cares if you're good? Like, just go. Just meet people. And I remember standing at a bar and overhearing a conversation with Marc Winters. And just walking up and saying, and he was talking about this like cool, like retreat kind of thing. And a friend of mine from art school had gone on a retreat, and I thought that's what he was talking about. You probably know her, this lady Tiffany. I forget her last name, but he was talking Prothero, exactly. But he was talking about the IMC. So I hunted down Irene Gallo at the conference and was like, what is this thing? And like, she said, oh, it's sold out. And I was like, I got to get it, and I managed to get a spot, knowing nothing about it. And again, it was one of those things where I really had the support of my wife being like, just go, just try stuff. Like, you never know. And, and you remember that year, it was 2009. I hadn't painted in 4 or 5 years at that point since art school, but I got there about my paints. I got to tell you, man, I've been getting to know these illustrators, John Foster, all these people, and I'm like, I'm gonna kill it. Like, I'm gonna go there, I'm gonna show them these sketches, and they're gonna be like, where has this guy been? And as you know, that's usually not how it goes.
You need some work.
Yeah, I think I remember, and I've told Greg this story, but I remember Greg coming over to my painting and saying, I sort of thought people would have some training when they got here. And I was like, oh, damn. Greg and we're good friends. We've made up over it. But that was a real eye-opener for me. Before that, I went to school for computer science. I went back to art school. I fell back on my tech skills, was working in games and that kind of stuff, but I really didn't have like a direction. And it's funny to say I went to art school and I got there and I saw people like you and Rebecca and, Donato and everyone who teaches there, and was like, oh my God, you can do this and like sell it. Like, that's crazy.
I think it takes a demystification for a lot of people. I was fortunate that when I was 16, I met a professional artist, and it was just like, oh, this seems extremely practical. I know how, like, you do this and you do this, and it's a job. It's a job. And when somebody kind of peels that curtain back, it seems more doable.
You're absolutely right. And that mindset and those skills have served me, for the last 15 years, even in what I'm doing now. Like, I'm gonna bounce around a little bit, but like I went back to school for coaching recently, a couple of years ago, and it's amazing to me like how much of the just sort of entrepreneurial mindset that so many of us take for granted, like, okay, you've got to be on social media, you've got to do a mailing list, you've got to talk to people, all this stuff. Like people, professional people in my program, this was totally new to them. So
Yeah.
I had a leg up because of these experiences. A lot of people would have gone into, the sort of massive change that I went through a few years ago and said, oh, I'm starting over. But I didn't see it that way, because those skills, that's the creativity part. It's like, how do I use these skills? Yes, I was selling art much more before, but now I'm kind of selling this other thing. Like so much of it is transferable. But that,
Absolutely. And
yeah,
integral. I think I don't know any successful illustrator who isn't a good businessman or woman as well. And I think like anytime I hear people complaining about their jobs, it's like, I figured out how to sell drawings and I'm doing okay. I can sell water and it would be way easier. Something people actually need is just knowing how to sell it, essentially. You need
I
the
mean, and
water.
we talk about this all the time, right? Like I see some comments in the chat, and unfortunately, if I join the chat, I'm gonna have to leave this window. So hello to people who are saying hello. Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, it is one of those skills, and it's still shocking to me that they don't really teach it in art school.
Yeah.
And it's hard to get exposure to people like Smart School, where you have people who are teaching, but they're out there and they're doing this work. So you have an opportunity to be in a room and kind of ask anything, and say like, okay, so wait a minute, I've got a client and they want to pay me this much, like really specific questions. So there's so much value to that one-on-one interaction, which again is something that I've kind of taken with me through this time period. But in the last 15 years, like we became good friends. You took me to my first AlluxCon, which I want everyone to understand. Like I don't know how people see me. People often tell me like, oh, you seem so confident, whatever. Like my first AlluxCon, which was at that tiny little Altoona, like that tiny little space. I remember going there, not really knowing what I had just been to the IMC, right? And I was like, okay, there's some really good people here.
It's like throwing a kid into the deep end of the pool, by the way.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
No, and this kid had to go back to the hotel like at least once a day just to like breathe and be like, oh my God, you're so over your head right now. This is crazy. This is crazy.
It's exhilarating and detrimental. I mean, when I started in this art career, it was a lot smaller of a pool of talent. And now I think, this idea of having to sell yourself, whether or not you're good at it, and this idea of seeing all of this insane talent that's doing it and being able to meet them, it's overwhelming. I think it like some people crack under that pressure.
Right. No, and this is the thing, now that I've been going to AlluxCon since you took me every year, and went to the IMC for many, many years, taught at Smart School for many years, and over and over and over again, the part of the reason for my transition and at the beginning of COVID was like most of the things that I end up talking people through or sort of mentoring people on is really kind of like the mindset stuff. Just the part about like, who cares about the comparison being the thief of joy. Just go make stuff, and also, I mean, this, I don't know if you guys know this, but at the beginning of my Smart School class, the illustration class, everyone would come in and say, okay, so why are you here? What do you want to do with your work? Like, introduce yourselves. And everyone would say, oh, I want to do art full time, and I'd like to figure out how to do that. And I, like, without fail, every semester, the first class, I would give like a sort of a 10-minute spiel on like, maybe you actually don't want that, and it's okay. Like it's fine not to want that, because it's not just, I mean, better than anyone. You're not just sitting in your studio painting. There is a lot of that, obviously, if you're doing it and being successful, but even at your level, there's a lot of conversations, travel, sales, social media, like all this stuff, and all the stuff you're doing for Muddy Colors, I honestly can't even imagine. But then you take someone who's not there yet, and it's like, I mean, you're screaming into the void half the time, and you have to have the support and the tools to keep going. Yeah. I'm actually curious, Dan, because you started so long before like the internet and all this other stuff. Like, are you just stubborn? Like, what? How did you figure it out?
Absolutely, arrogance and stubbornness, I think, is the secret to my success. And I think weirdly, a lot of people I know is this just like, I don't know if it's that I have a little case of Asperger's or what, but it's just pigeonholed thinking. There has never been a plan B for me. There's never been any alternative of like anything else I want to do. This is it. This is just this one really just lock onto it kind of laser focused thing. And I just never accepted anything else. Probably to my detriment in many ways, but so far it's worked for me.
Yeah. Yeah, and that is great, and that is possible. And the reality of the world is that there's not, there's hundreds or thousands of times more artists in the world than there are people who can sell or be given commissions at your level. Not to like not to dash anybody's dreams, but that is that is the numbers. And so the thing that I'm coming to now more than anything is really, and I'm working with this in my group now, is like, you should find a way, and there are ways to find fulfillment every day. And it doesn't actually have to be with that, like, okay, I sold a piece of art, or I sold a bit, or now I'm famous, or whatever. I mean, that's great if you can get it. I really like this. It's all over the place. In my world, it's all over. My Facebook feed is all kinds of stuff that maybe isn't in other people's feeds. But this idea of like a goal is just such a red herring for me. Like, if you think about, like, I train jujitsu. I go every day. I love it. And you start a martial art, and there's all these different belt levels, and you think, okay, like, I want to be a black belt, right? Like, that's the goal, right? But if I went in every day with just that in my head, like I'm working towards that, then basically I'd be going in every day as a failure because I haven't reached my goal. And then when I finally do, get my black belt, that's a great day, good day. And then after that, not only do I not have, I don't even have a goal. Like, I don't, like, I'm rudderless. So
Man,
yeah,
that's absolutely true. You were mentioning a little bit, talking to your students about, do you actually want to do this for a living? I think most people's idea of, I want to be an artist, is I want to get paid for art. It's not, I want to be good at art. I want to be like, it's always this notoriety or a monetary equation to their idea of success, and myself included. Like, I never said as a child, I want to be a really good painter when I grow up. I said, I want to be a famous artist when I grow up.
right.
And then, yeah, if you don't achieve that, you're like wrecking your sense of self-worth. Or if you do achieve it, like, it's like, oh, well, now what? and I
Yeah.
think there's a lot of benefit to not necessarily wanting that. Like, I think part of why I think maybe you've grown so rapidly early on was, I think you took your training very deliberately and you put in this time to focus on practice. And I would watch you practice and do things that were not jobs and just straight up practice. And I could see you excel to this point where ultimately that goes past somebody who's just stubborn or arrogant or whatever. And you end up reaping these incredible rewards from it, I think.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I've always been a fan of sort of the science behind these things, and I remember many late night conversations with you or Greg Manchester, who geeks out over this stuff. The whole idea of talent not existing. You just got to put time on the mat, so to speak. And I will say, I want to acknowledge too, like, I've also been very fortunate. Like, my wife, when in 2000, when I met you, I think at that point I was kind of making more money than my wife at that point with the jobs that I had in games and other things. And that equation has definitely flipped. And I've had so much support from her. So, my ability to put that kind of time in so fast, frankly, and totally honestly, was because I had that support in house. I had my wife who was this was a game changer. I mean, like, literally changed my life. 2011, I think, Rebecca was like, I want to do this like mentorship thing. Not Smart School, just like, I want to see if we can do this thing online. And
this
put
is
out
Rebecca Gay you're speaking of, right?
Yeah, Rebecca Gay. Yeah, that's right. So she put out the word to the IMC list or something and said, I've got 6 spots. And I went to my wife, and I didn't even say, she was like, how's your day? I was like, oh, Rebecca's got this new thing. I really want to do it. I don't have the money. She's like, we have the money, go do it. Like, it's okay. Like, she was that kind of support. Like, this is something that you want to do. I'm gonna make it happen. And it was from that I got to, support Rebecca at the beginning as the tech assistant, as working in all the classes, and then teaching and smart. I mean, it really like literally changed my life, that one conversation with my wife. But I just want to make so clear, like I had that support. So, I do talk to a lot of people who are like, oh, I can't ask for help. I can't ask for this. I can't ask for that. And like, but you have to have that. This stuff doesn't happen. This stuff doesn't happen without the support. Whether, maybe you are the breadwinner, someone's got to be managing that. Like someone's helping you. You don't just sort of
Even if
get
you
there
are,
because
my case is flipped a little bit. I'm the breadwinner, but the
yeah.
only reason I'm capable of doing that is my wife keeps me alive. like I would not be able to do these jobs I've done if she wasn't cooking every meal and making sure I ate, bathed, washed my it's literally I'm her pet and she's just keeping me going.
You're
All I
like a
do
real life
is do the
Tamagotchi.
work.
Like, yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's true. And I mean, it doesn't have to be a partner. Like I know people who live, I used to live in community when I lived in San Francisco, and that was great for, for that time, but you really have to have that support. And now, obviously this is what I do now. Like when, as a coach, what I do with a lot of people, we have lots of tools, we have lots of exercises, we have lots of ways of shifting perspective. And at the end of the day, the thing that I've heard back from my clients and also the people in the group that I run is like, it's just good to know that I can come here. It's just good to know that I can come here and be like, stuff's hard right now. And you're like, oh, just go ahead. Tell it, like, and it feels, you end up feeling better and you end up having more motivation, and the little gremlin starts to sort of quiet down.
Yeah. And I think artists in particular are rougher on themselves than most people. Maybe it is that idea of mixing vocation and passion, or it's just in our nature that we're more sensitive or something. But man, I feel like it's a hard struggle, in particular for artists.
Sensitive is a good word too, and I think it's obviously it can be used and often is used in a more derogatory, negative kind of fashion. But I think in many ways this was a game changer for me too. Also, like I've been with a therapist for the last, I don't know how many years, like off and on, and she's fantastic. And I remember we were talking about my sensitivity, having sort of like, difficult emotional childhood and having to be very sensitive to the adults around me. When you grow up, like that can be a little bit annoying if you're like constantly kind of on edge. And she was like, but look at it like this is a superpower that you have. Like you can use that ability to sense things and make clear choices from that. It doesn't have to be something that's happening to you all the time necessarily. Obviously there's certain situations that I don't like to be in, and I don't be in them.
Yeah.
But I'm also, like I said, I'm 47, so I've had a little bit of time to like figure out where my boundaries are.
in most, I think, the idea of you having an art background, that's such a special advantage to this coaching you're doing. Because I'm assuming most people who life coach are probably coming from business backgrounds or something, and not
So
really.
many.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot. I mean, I would say, I'm thinking on my feet right now, but yes, there's a lot of people who come from some sort of executive position and say, okay, I'm going to sort of take that cachet and coach, or people who are coming from the more sort of mindfulness, spiritual side. And I've done work in all of those different modalities. The most people come to me, because they're looking for coaching, and I have a creative background. They go, okay, I'm looking for a coach, and this guy probably gets the language, probably gets the struggle. And it's true. And I have to say, like, I've had a really good experience with all my clients. And when I'm really just upfront and honest about what my experiences have been, it's really validating for people. Sometimes this is the first time that they've heard, like, it's okay to not know what you're doing. It's okay to feel frustrated. It's okay to feel hopeless, or whatever it is that it's okay to feel really angry that you put in all this work and didn't get paid or didn't get the job, or whatever it is. Yeah.
Thinking about, coaches coming from business backgrounds, they're probably good leaders. They're probably people who have led teams and elicited this great work from their team, and that's how they've excelled in their job is as a leader. And it's one of the things that artists are deprived of, is we don't get a boss, like not a boss in that regard that's actually interested in our well-being and getting the best work out of us. It's we have clients, which is a little different.
Yeah.
And so I think we have to be our own leaders a little bit or something. We need our own pep squad or whatever it is to get us through this.
No, leadership is a really interesting one, because that's what a lot of, executive coaches will sort of executive and leadership are different in some very specific ways, but leadership and what you're talking about is essentially self-leadership. um, if I'm working with someone who's leading a team, it's really about bringing some of these coaching principles into their team, where, again, like you said, it's not just like, okay, here's the numbers, here's the plan, let's go. It's finding that balance between, being a little bit vulnerable, being open and being transparent, being supportive, while also, being clear about what the goals are and what the expectations are. I mean, in many ways, it's like being a parent.
It's true.
Right? Like, you can't lose your mind. I mean, you do sometimes, and you have to own up to that. But, like, you gotta model the best behavior. It's so frustrating with kids, like, when they're screaming at you, like, you just want to scream back and make it stop. But, like, you have to be like, no, I don't want them to scream back at me when so, like, we have to do some good modeling here. But,
Yeah.
so much of the coaching work that I do with individuals and groups is about taking that on, kind of like turning that lens inward. Like, how do I take a moment in whatever emotion I'm having, acknowledge that, emotion, sort of separate that from what's actually happening, and start to make some clear choices.
Hmm. I see some comments coming in on that note. For anybody watching this, we have this streaming on multiple platforms. It's on our YouTube page, it's on Money Colors, it's on Patreon. Just click the video and follow it over to YouTube. If you want to place a comment, we can actually screen comments directly from YouTube, and only on YouTube. If you have any questions for Mark, I'm going to toss one up right now, actually.
Really good one.
Yeah. What was the
Yeah.
financial challenge in getting into business of art that you weren't prepared to put money and invest in, but ultimately was necessary?
Education,
Yeah,
ongoing education.
that's
Easy
fair.
answer. Easy
Yeah,
answer. So, and it's the same
and
with
it's a fun one
coaching.
too. It's like the best one. It's the thing. There's nothing I love spending money on more than like classes and workshops.
I know. I actually had to, like, give my, because last year was sort of my first. Was it my first? It was a big year for my coaching. I was putting a lot of investment in myself with groups and education and stuff that I was doing. And this year I was like, okay, this year is going to be about the income, and next year I'll put a lot of it back in. But yeah, no, I wasn't prepared for that. But like you said, Dan, thinking back to 2009, thinking back to the IMC, that investment, Smart School, that investment, and even some of the other, all these little, now there's like a million things you can take, $47 to, learn social media or whatever. Like, there's too many things out there to say they're all good, but there are some good ones out there. And if you can find stuff that is specifically addressing a problem that you have, in general, I think it's worth it.
It's invaluable. I think maybe for me, a surprising one was advertising. A lot of people
Mm,
don't, this idea of launching a business, and I know that's not the topic here, but it's art. Illustration and art is a business, and nobody else would start a business, a mechanic shop, and not expect to spend money on advertising. Yet somehow artists think just feeding their art into Instagram is going to do the job, and it's not. You need to
no.
submit to Spectrum or Infected by Art or whatever. You need to, like, Society of Illustrators. Those things cost money to submit. It's worth it. That's advertising. Yeah.
No, absolutely. Yeah, I remember I graduated in art school. I graduated in 2005, and we had one sort of portfolio class that was also the business building. I mean, there was no business. The business was go to the bookstore, write down all the names of the of
Yeah.
the publishing companies, and go try to talk to them. And then Instagram and these things come out, and for a while it's like a gold mine for people who got on early. But things have changed. It doesn't, I don't think we need to, like, sit here and complain about it, but it's not. You can't just be on there and suddenly, like, there's your money. You could have, I mean, I see people, we know people who have hundreds of thousands of followers, and it doesn't translate necessarily to income.
No,
Yeah.
I pride myself on that fact. Every time I get worried about it, I go look at the accounts that actually have millions of followers, and I'm like, oh my God, this is inane. This is what I need to do is wear a bikini and draw manga. And, like, I'm not going there.
Was in
But
favor? Yeah. I mean, yeah, I have such a love-hate relationship with social media, but things sort of changed for me over the past few years with that, especially at, like, COVID hit, and let's be honest, I moved out of the city. We moved upstate, where we have a little place. The kids were home all the time, which was terrible. These two kids, we had like a 9-year-old and a 4-year-old, a 5-year-old, something. I did not make any art for like a while. Like I just didn't. Never mind, I didn't really have the space that I was used to. Like I was sad and tired and a little bit angry most of the time. Like it just was a terrible time. And I say all that because like in terms of social media, like part of it was like, oh, I should really like, I felt for a while, I was like, I've got to do stuff so that I'm like, why am I doing this?
Yeah.
And
I
what it
think
came back to was like what you said before, was like getting back into just the practice of it. Like I want to enjoy sitting down and sketching and not be worried about it's not going to be good or, or whatever.
I mean, that's the heart of it. And it's so hard. Mentioning, the first assignment, the business assignment is go compare yourself to the books on the shelf. And it's comparison. And it's like, go advertise yourself. It's Instagram. It's comparison to everybody, every artist in the whole damn world now you're comparing yourself to. And it takes a toll. And I've had phases where I was like, yeah, I just don't want to do this. And our business is so ingrained or so entangled with our mood. Like I can't produce good work if I'm not feeling good about it, and it's hard. It's truly hard.
It is hard.
Are you deliberate about screening any of that stuff? Do you
What
have
do you mean?
practices you do to avoid screening social media or anything like that? Like
Screening
filtering
from,
out stuff?
oh, I gotta say I've actually been a little bit worse about it lately. But I do. I have one practice that I'll recommend that is a real banger. Everybody should do this. It frustrates my wife, but it's really effective. I do not look at my phone for the first hour of my day. I do not look at it. I pick it up to see if she sent me a message, because she stays up later than me. So I pick it up to see if there's any like SOS that I need to deal with in the morning. I do not look at other text messages. I do not look at Facebook. I literally, did Chloe text me? Phone is off for an hour.
I know a lot of people that do that. I weirdly do the opposite. Is I lay in bed and I do my emails and stuff, and then once that's addressed, I'm like, there is no reason for me to sign back onto this again. Now that I'm out of bed, that internet is gone. Like
all of these tools and practices. The funny thing, like I said, I run this group, and we'll talk about it. It's called the Unleashed Creativity Club. But the course that people go through, or the big course that we do is 84 days, and you get these little journaling exercises for 84 days. What I keep reminding people is like, look, all of this stuff is an invitation. I have books and books of like how to get people through all these things, and it's not going to work for everybody. In the coaching relationship, and a lot of this we get to do in Smart School. Like all I really care is that somebody gives it a shot. If you go and you're, if you're like, I want you to go do 5 black and white drawings this week just to get, whatever, go do some ink drawing, and they do it and they're like, I hated it. You're like, great. Now you hate it. Okay.
So we don't mean the goal with the ink drawings. The goal of the ink drawings is to probably make something else good and just
exactly. No, exactly. And that is, there's this idea that's in the coaching world is being coachable, and it's not just in our world. Like from Smart School, from IMC, if somebody is, if somebody's coming in and they're getting a critique, nobody likes the person who's like, yeah, well, I had to do it. Well, no, I don't like it. Like, okay, just listen. You can filter it out later. You can do it or not.
This philosophy is the first stage of learning is learning how to learn, and it's
sure, yeah.
True.
I see you've brought up the neurological levels slide.
Speaking of learning, I'm guessing I have no idea what this is about, so you'll be teaching me as well. But I assume there must be something about learning in here.
This is kind of it's a framework and a foundation for growth. And I think and I know from my very varied background, and just to speed up that a little bit, like I said, computer science, I did tech. I was working in games, did art, did illustration, fine art. I was the executive director of a nonprofit. I was a founder of a tech company. Like I've done all these different things.
You've done art direction as well. Am I mistaken about that?
And sorry, yes, art direction as well. Yeah.
Which I like as a particular. I love the idea of you being on both ends of that art battle, essentially.
Yeah. I mean, it gave me real insight and, frankly, a lot of empathy for what how much ads, not to say it in sort of a negative way, but sort of like have to deal with. And like we said at the beginning, like it's not ads don't, like all they do is not just sit around and go, oh, I like that, I think I'll make them a job. Like that's 1/200th, of their day. It's all the meetings and negotiations with editors and bosses and CEOs who shouldn't even be in the room, frankly, and like all of these other things. And so like there's a whole industry that they have to like contend with so that you don't have to. And it gave me real insight when I was doing that in, I forget, it was like 2014 or 2015, 2013, 2016, anyway, somewhere in there. Yeah. But these neurological levels is it's, we don't always talk about it explicitly. Oh, that's great. So you got the slide up. So these are kind of like levels of personal transformation, personal growth, personal change. But it applies to, you can apply it on sort of the big, real, who am I level. And you can also apply it to, I want to get better at, something. So I'll give you kind of the overview, and you've got this, so people who are watching, you can see it. There's sort of 6 levels. I have a different way of looking at the top level, but there's this concept of the lower levels, which is the bottom 3 levels, and then the upper levels. Now, when we're talking about creating change in our life, we talk mostly, the advice that we get is mostly these lower levels. If you're unhappy in a job, or you're not getting enough time to work on your art, you can change your environment. You can literally move to another state, move to another job, set up a different room to work in. Like you can change your physical or even emotional environment. Environment includes people. Like maybe you need to get rid of some people or bring some other kinds of people in your life. And then there's your behaviors. Like, how are you actually engaging with this environment? Maybe you live in a fantastic spot to do it, but you're scrolling on Facebook all day. So you need to change your behaviors to support the goals and your vision, right? So we'll get to that. And then of course there's capabilities, right? Like you want to be a better artist, you got to put time on the mat. Like simple as that. You want to be a better coach, you want to be better at self-reflection, you want to be better at meditating, you want to be better at jujitsu. I don't care what it is. Like you have to put time into it. So that's that capabilities level. So that's where most people, like, think about conversations that you have with friends when you're like, oh, I really want this to change. They're like advice, and it's all kind of down here.
Yeah.
Now,
I've had experience with this, and this quote might have come from a TV show, if anything. But somebody once told me, I was discussing being unhappy with some art stuff, and maybe there wasn't enough art community around, and all these things. And they said, it sounds like you're looking for a physical solution to a spiritual problem. And I was like, man, that is on point. Like if I just change jobs, if I just change houses, change whatever, this is going to make me happy. And it's not. It never is. Very rarely.
That's right. And this is what Daniel Pink talks about in his book, Drive. He talks about external and intrinsic motivation. We look for the job, the salary, the awards, the accolades, and then I'll be happy. That's a goal. Just like I said at the beginning, those are just little blips while you're hopefully enjoying the process of whatever you're doing.
Get a job for this client and I'll be happy. Yeah.
Oh my God. I mean, I remember going to Gen Con. I forget when it was like 2010, 2011. And I remember being in a hotel room with a bunch of other artists, some, probably people here know. And a couple of them kind of ran the numbers and they were like, oh crap. Like, even if I get a job at Magic the Gathering, that doesn't cover my bills. And even if I was like the most, even if they gave me the most cards that they ever give somebody, that's not an annual salary. Like I need to also think about these other things. So something that I think Smart School is great at, all the teachers there are really sort of expanding people's idea of, what is it? There's this concept of ikigai, right? I didn't send you this slide. I should have thought of it in advance.
Oh yeah. The Japanese idea of
it's a Venn diagram and it's got 4 circles. It's what am I good at? What do I love doing? What does the world need? And what can I get paid for? And if you can find that kind of sweet spot in the middle.
Worth repeating. I know probably a lot of people have seen this graphic, but repeat those 4 things again.
Yeah, it's called Ikigai, Ikigai. And the 4 sort of Venn diagram is what am I good at? Or what can I get better at? That's okay too. What can I get better at? What can I be good at? What do I enjoy doing? What does the world need? What do people need? and what can I get paid for?
That's solid. That's solid. Yeah. If something checks off all those boxes, you're probably in a pretty sweet spot, I'd
Right.
say.
And this is, you know, when especially when I talk to artists and they're really struggling with really even enjoying being on the, you know, being at the table or doing the work because they've got all this other stuff in their head. I've got all these other tools that we can kind of try to get that. But I'm like, don't try to sit down and just push through that. Like we need what we need to work on are these upper levels, right? These upper logical neurological levels, so that we can get clear on our deeper purpose and why we're here and why we're sitting at this table. And when you're connected to that, it's much easier to actually do it without the specter of, you know, some potential failure or, you know, or success over your head.
Yeah.
The upper levels, to quickly go through those, these are your values and beliefs. You know, I have a, actually, I'll post a link. I have a worksheet that people are welcome to do. It's for free if you join my mailing list on this one particular website. I'll send this to you for free. But it basically takes you through like what are some examples of, you know, life values, things like creativity, humor, peace, you know, fun, joy, like these words that sound a little woo-woo, but you'd be surprised that when you do this exercise and you end up with your sort of core values or core values for the moment, because we're all changing all the time, it's really, it's like a nice feeling. It's a nice feeling, like you realize, because then you sit down and you're like, I'm not feeling creativity, humor, and fun, so I need to figure out how I can do this in a way that actually is those things, because those are the things that are important to me. And so it's not about getting the next job. It's about finding the thing that you're spending your time on that is those values.
Yeah.
And then the level above that, this is where things start to get really, really fun, is like, who are you, your identity? Who are you being? Who, you know, what are the qualities that, I also acknowledge that I do have ADHD and I do stop sometimes middle of a thought to finish it later. So hopefully people are following along. But identity, right? Like one of the exercises that I love to do with people, and you can do this at home too, and I'll just share this stuff if people want to try it. But you know, one of the things that we do is we sort of visualize, like, you know, where do you want to be where do you imagine yourself in a year? And, you know, like, let's sort of figure out, like, where, you know, are you at the same place, same job, same people, or different? Let's figure it out. Okay, so now you've got that. Now, let's say you're watching a movie of that future. This is a real exercise I do with people, and it's really powerful when we do it together. So you've got that vision. That's a movie that you're watching now, and you're in it. You're watching yourself go through your day. What do you see? Oh, they're smiling. They're 10 pounds lighter. They're, you know, whatever. Now tell me the qualities of that person. Like, what is that person's friend saying about them? Oh, they're really funny. They're confident. They have their stuff together. I don't know if I can swear on this.
You're okay.
I'll try to keep it light. You know, they have their shit together. And you say, okay, like that's what you're working towards. You're not working towards these awards. You're not working towards, you know, getting on the spectrum stage or whatever. You're working towards being happy in that way, being fulfilled in that way every day. Right. And so then this last level, which I've hinted at a little bit in this graphic, it's the vision. Different clients want to look at this different ways. Sometimes it's literally just a vision for you. Like I work with people who are like, I'm not trying to change the world. I just want, like, me and my husband and my kids, or no kids or whatever. I want to bring my purpose in this way. And some people think about their purpose in a bigger way. Like, you know, what you're doing with Muddy Colors obviously has a huge impact and a ripple effect as people get to know what you guys are up to and start to really get value from what you guys are doing and bring more people in. Like, there's a ripple effect. So that's sort of a larger purpose. There's no better way to do it. It doesn't, you know, not everyone has to be Mother Teresa. Like, it's okay to live a good life and be happy. So this top level, I think about it as purpose, or more of a spiritual level. Like, what, you know, what am I a part of? Why am I here? And in the group that I run, and you know, I've done some workshops on this. I did one at LuxCon last year, 2 years ago, I forget. But it was about, you know, just some simple exercises that you can find a sense of purpose. I say it that way because I've been doing this work for 20 years. My first exposure to this concept of purpose, and not this diagram, but these ideas, was 20 years ago in a men's circle in San Francisco, where there were a lot of other people who were doing coaching work at that time, which was not as big as it is now. And the purpose of this circle wasn't to do, to create some sort of dastardly plan to take over the world, but it was to support men specifically in living their purpose, being more authentic, being better to their, communities and families. And it was a really beautiful space. It was challenging, it was supportive, but we worked a lot on finding a sense of purpose, and even a phrase or a 2-word or a sentence that we could kind of walk around with. And again, sort of like our values, say, okay, I'm in this situation, I'm feeling off kilter. Let me remember what my purpose is. And okay, so what do I do? What do I do from here? Knowing that it's not about, I've got to get out of here or I've got to get that thing. It's like, what do I do from that purpose?
It's funny when you say that, because I have a vision in my head. When I think of like old Dan in my head, there's like this picture. I picture me getting up early in the morning, which I never do. And I'm an early riser and I'm painting and there's plants around and my wife and my partners are outside gardening. And like, there's this whole vision in my head of how I picture it. And then I think there's literally nothing stopping me from that being today, literally today, except just my outlook. And I don't know why I don't do this sometimes, or what's this gap between there. But it's like, what am I waiting for? There's literally no hurdle between me and that vision, and except something I'm doing to myself, I realize.
What? Well, I can't help myself now. That's a beautiful vision. It sounds peaceful.
Yeah, it does sound peaceful. I think maybe that's it. Not that my life isn't peaceful now. It is really peaceful. I
No,
don't.
no, and this is kind of where we get in our own way, where we're like, no, I'm fine now. But that's okay. It's okay to want something slightly different. Or yeah, I I don't believe that you're probably gonna start getting up early tomorrow, Dan. But so maybe we'll skip that one. But like spending time outside, is there a way? Is there a way that you could intentionally, even for a few minutes, make that a part of your life next week?
Yeah. Yeah. I know. I try to be deliberate about it. I drink my coffee and do my crossword outside in the sun now. And then I go back to my cave and paint for 14 hours.
Yeah. But this, so what people, I see some people in the comments giggling. Yeah. I mean, this is part of the conversation that I have with people, where people say stuff like that, and I'm like, okay, so answer your own question, and you did, like, and then we'll even push and start to maybe build an accountability and say, okay, if I call you next week, if I called you at the end of if you were to live into that vision, Dan, that of this grizzled old guy sitting outside, if you were to live that today, because we should be living for today, right? Like I don't want to have all my freedom when I can't walk. But if I were to call you at the end of next week, knowing that your vision is that, what would you like to tell me that was like a win for you in that particular arena?
That I did it. And the fact is, I don't do it. And I don't know if this is the same reason I don't go to the gym or whatever, but I don't do the thing that I know I want most of the time. Like, I'm just not. I think a lot of us know the steps we have to take. We know we have to practice. We know we have to train. We know we have to go be social. We know all these things, and we just don't do it for whatever reason. What would I say to you that I would be happy to say? I would say, man, I just painted for myself all week. Didn't worry about those deadlines, and I got my hands dirty in the soil with my family. That would be a good week.
Which of those is the most important to you? Like, if I said you can only, this is all, like, this is the conversation that we have, right? Like, it's all just playing around. Like, okay, great. Let's say you have to pick one. Like, if I called you and you said, I just painted for myself all week, but I didn't spend much time with my family, versus every day at some point, for 20 minutes, like I potted something with my wife and my kids.
That's hard, because the not painting thing seriously takes a toll on my.
No, not that you wouldn't be painting, but the whole, like, I'm going to change my entire schedule to just be personal work.
Yeah, I think that's like choosing between me spending time with people I love or spending time on myself.
Mm, mm.
That part is maybe difficult for me to choose from. I ultimately would choose them because I feel like there's benefit for them in that as well. It's being a little less selfish. But
I'm really glad you mentioned that. One of the questions when we get to this higher level is, if you're being this identity, if you're living these values, and you're living your purpose in the world, who else, excuse me, who else benefits from this? The answer is often, my loved ones, my immediate family. If I'm better, if I'm feeling better, if I'm less constantly anxious and worried and struggling, then they're better, they're freer, they're
yeah,
more liberated, they get to do the things that they want to do, they get to do this work if they want to do it.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, maybe let's go to the next slide, because I know it sort of relates. Finding purpose. Yeah, we did talk about it a little bit. It's, of all the logical levels, I do think that this is, if you're just going to pick one, I think this is the most powerful. What people come into this work from, in all different places. And so some people, sometimes it really is just one of the things that I work with people for, this is weird to me, but it was like a big change in my life, was like working on their schedule. I put an article up on my blog on Substack about focus blocks, and just, it's a very easy way to think about creating a schedule with that sense of purpose and values. So it's not about like
just breaking down your day into different general areas of focus.
Yeah, exactly. And the key is not to get too up in arms about it, not to get too specific about it, and to have places where you're going to have rollover some days where you're like, I really meant to get this done and I didn't. You have to have a way of tracking that. I don't care if it's a notebook or Google Tasks or Trello or whatever, just a way that you can kind of get it out of your head and you can come back to, so that when you're in the, family time block, you can go and look and say, these are the things that I was hoping to get done with my family. I don't care if it's playing Mario Kart or cooking or whatever. My daughter just got into Mario Kart for the first time. So
that's why it's funny. It's good.
She was playing at like the 150cc and just losing her mind. And I was like, girl, you just started this game. Play the 50cc. It's much, and so we're driving upstate. She's in the car in the back talking a bunch of shit, just like, I'm first place. I'm gonna crush daddy. Like, just like talking all this stuff. We played last night
for blue shells.
It did not go as planned for her. She went right back to Animal Crossing, but
this is how you get kids with thick skin who just do one thing.
She's actually, I gotta say, like, she's only 9, so she hasn't quite hit those teenage years like my son is, but she's so creative. Like, she's so creative. She's so game. She's so funny, and I legitimately just like love being in a room with her, because she'll just start talking a bunch of crap, and it's just hilarious. But she'll like, if I like, I remember the other weekend, like we were upstate and she was not being a cool person, and I took her iPad. I was like, you can't talk to people that way. And I just took it and I was like, you got to figure out something else. 10 minutes later, she's like at her art table, like creating some, drawings and sculpting something, taping things together, and like I'd totally forgotten about this. And I just want to say, like, that's what creativity can do. It doesn't have to be for all of this stuff. Like, I look at her and I'm like, she gets it, dude. Like, she's just in the process. I can show you some of the stuff. Like, it's not going to be in a museum, but it is amazing, and it amazes me, and it like hits me in the heart. And that's what I, there's my bounce around. When COVID hit, and this ties into the purpose thing, so it's actually a good time. When COVID hit, and we went upstate, it was terrible. And I met someone who had a bunch of money and property, and I had this idea for creating artist residencies that were radically inclusive. Like, it wasn't just going to be like, okay, let's get like big names, whatever. Like, no, we wanted to find people who really could use a break. underrepresented artists, Black women, trans, queer. Like we were really looking to reach out to communities that didn't always have access. And the other thing that we did is it was one of the few residencies that I know where we actually paid people to come, which was great, and it worked for a while. It ended up being kind of a toxic environment for me in various ways, and I was given the opportunity to stay, but I could see that I needed to move on for my own mental health. And just speaking really plainly, like I was more depressed than I've ever been in my life. This is 2021. I didn't get out of bed basically for 3 weeks. Like I got up, I cooked dinner for my family, I put it on the table, I went back upstairs to bed. Like I was a shell. And once again, my wife basically at some point kind of had a little come to Jesus with me and was like, look, we're good. We're financially okay. There's no rush on this. Like I can't figure this out for you. You have to go figure this out. What are you going to do next? Because I don't think you're going to be happy lying in bed all day. Like, and I wasn't.
Yeah.
And it was a real, in a very, very supportive, but also very clear way. And what I came back to was purpose. What would somebody with my purpose and the words that I use for my purpose that I've been using for the last 18, 20 years is that my purpose is to unleash creativity. And the interesting thing about purpose is that it's not something you do. Like my purpose is to make paintings that make people happy. That's
funny,
just
that word makes us think of tasks. It's like, what's the purpose of my life? What am I going to accomplish rather than who am I? What am I going to be? What's my state of being?
Yeah. And I've worked with a lot of people on this, and most of the time people find something and then they sort of work with it, bring it to mind during their day, during their week. And a couple weeks later, they go, you know what? I actually want to use a different word. I think it's a little bit more like this, there's a layer of the onion that you peel off and go, I think there's something else there. For me, this has really been core to how I approach the world, but I haven't always done it. Like what I do has changed. Initially it was about whenever this happened, I just graduated art school, it was about, running this company that we had founded. It was about, when I was working in electronic arts, like how can I bring more creativity to the team, to my day? And we were also throwing all these underground events. I was part of a community in San Francisco throwing basically raves that were, super fun and creative. And I decided to do one where like it was all centered around art that people were bringing, and a fashion show and photography. And some guy showed people how to make sculpture that would blow fire. So that's what that's kind of how it started. But then, as my career and, I got married, I had kids, all these things change. It changes. And sometimes the purpose changes. And for me, it's the action that has changed. So, thinking about like all my time spent in Smart School, so much of what I was doing and that I think a lot of the teachers there are so good at is actually giving people space to kind of just be themselves. Like I've actually seen you do it in class, Dan, where I remember like, I forget who it was and I wouldn't name them if I remembered, but like, somebody came in and they like really did not do what they were going to do, right? They didn't do any of the work. And you're like, you're very real. You're like, look, in the real world, like that, that doesn't fly, but like, what's going on? Like what's getting in your way? And there's so many places that don't ask those questions. They don't, I don't know. It's not that they don't care necessarily, but it's scary, right? Because if you ask somebody what's getting in the way, they might be like, oh, my mom died, or like I'm struggling with mental health. And then you're like sitting in a room with that. But I've seen people in Smart School really handle those conversations quite beautifully. And and for me, it was almost like a training ground for a lot of what I do now. But at that time,
more intense. They're more intense than art classes should be. They're half psychology. They really are. Like I had somebody once tell me they thought my class was like a giant therapy session, because most of our artistic hurdles are emotional hurdles or outlook hurdles. I think the way we perceive things and our expectations that we put on these things are just that, for more times than not, they're the things that are inhibiting our creative abilities.
You're 100% right. And I've seen it over and over again, especially now in the work that I do now, where we're not even working on the art specifically, but you see how people get, maybe they get more productive, or they change, or they, they decide to stop making the art that they were doing because they really actually weren't enjoying it that much. They actually wanted to do something else. And I also want to say, like, for anybody listening, there's a chat, and if you've got questions about any of this stuff, drop in. I don't see anything there now, but this is where I was in 21, right? Like, I was at an absolute rock bottom, but I had all of this. I'd done some coaching myself, and I'd certainly hired coaches myself, and I'd been doing this work. And I was like, dude, you got tools. Like, what? Okay, so like, what are you gonna do? Well, let's figure out how to be creative. And I created an exercise that you can actually find on my YouTube. It's called the Joy Compass. I put it out there for people if they just want to do it. And for me, it was really, I could say what it is really, really quickly. You can go watch the video, but basically, you make a list of all the things that you do. So for me, it was like running Everyday Original, teaching at Smart School, being a friend of these people, being married, being a partner, being a parent, like all of it. Just like put all the stuff down there, like everything that you do. And then you circle the ones that when you look at it, this is a little Marie Kondo, right? Like when you look at it, you're like, oh, I feel a sense of like, I think when I think about that, I feel joyful. Okay. That's a good indicator. Now it's okay if like, because especially for the parents out there, like kids are sometimes in the joy category. And don't feel bad if you don't circle one. Like don't circle one out of obligation. Right? You should have, I don't know how many of them. And then you take the ones you circled and you just write them in a new list. And in that second list underneath those, you write like, what's all the things that actually goes into that, right? So like Smart School, it's like managing email, managing the tech, actually teaching the class, having conversations with people, doing demos, like all these different things. And then you circle just the ones within that job or task or, relationship that feel joyful. Then you take just those circled ones and you write them down in a third list. Now you've got a list of hopefully kind of actions or activities that are completely out of context and maybe feel unrelated to each other. The task that I gave myself, the creative puzzle that I was trying to solve is, okay, these are all the tasks that feel joyful. That's my job description. Who does that?
Yeah.
And I had to go figure it out. And actually, what you sort of mentioned this, but initially I was like, art therapy, this makes sense, right? Like I love having these conversations. I love it when people, write to me and say, wow, we spoke at a LuxCon and just that like 5-minute conversation really changed my perspective. I'm like, oh, this is great. Like, I love that feeling when people are getting their own growth out of this. So I actually did, like the deadline when I looked was like a week away for Pratt and NYU. And so I wrote to a couple of people, including Rebecca Gay, and I was like, I need a recommendation, but I kind of need it like now. And they came through. My old head instructor, Chuck Pyle at Academy of Art, kindly wrote me one. But then I had to wait months and months and months before hearing anything. And while I did that, I basically did the thing where I applied and then figured out if I actually wanted to do it. So I went out, I did, and now I'm out of bed. I've spent the summer at this point hanging out with my kids and just allowing myself to just be myself and to not worry about social media and all this other stuff. I was just present with my kids. We had a great summer, and now it's the fall and I'm like, okay, rubber meets the road. So I went out and I talked to some art therapists, one that I know and a few that I found through the school. I went and found other coaches, said, I just want to ask you about what your life. What's really funny is that all the art therapists I talked to, they all loved what they were doing. They loved it. But the kind, like I was like, what their day looked like. I was like, I don't think that's quite it. The coaches, none of them were actually really doing coaching. It turns out they were all kind of like, they had, the certification, but they weren't really doing it. So it's like, I want to be happy like them, but I want to do like what they're doing, just better. But again, like right to the beginning of this conversation, I've had these years of experience in the art world, and I'm like, this seems like I could actually take those tools and those lessons and how to do those things and apply it to just this other business. Cause I joke with people, like I went from art to coaching. So essentially, like, I really like selling people stuff that they're not going to die without. Like, like they don't have to have it. That's so, like, I just love that challenge. But I signed up for a coaching program. And I mean, it was in the first week, I was like, oh, this is it. this is it. I love this. I love
It's
this
been,
kind of
well, in
conversation.
retrospect, it seems such an obvious fit for you. Like, it really
Yeah,
does.
I mean, that's the thing. Like when you're sitting, and this is why, and I had, I had coaches that, that people that I'm working with, and it's great to have that outside feedback. That sometimes just to be like, dude, it's so obvious. Like you should just do the thing that you like doing. You're like, oh, I guess I could just figure out how to make that work instead of worrying about it's not going to work. But it came back to, that. So vision and values, right? Like the slide that you have up now. Had to really think about and did a lot of thinking about, because I'd had years of experience doing this other thing, like where do I imagine this going? And even in some very specific ways, like how much money do I think I'm going to be making? What is my schedule going to look like? And even crunching some of those numbers and saying, okay, like this is what I would have to do. And this is how I would, have to do it.
Having a vision, I think, is truly important for me. At least for me, I feel like I don't accomplish much unless I set a goal for myself. And I think that scares a lot of people, this idea of setting a goal. And it's, your goal can change constantly, is what I tell them. Like, this could
Amen.
be a goal for today, just today, and then screw it, and a new goal tomorrow. But like, you have to set some sort of target if you plan on making any sort of change, I think.
This was a conversation I had with a client who's another kind of creative, I'll say, does a lot of writing and filmmaking. And one of the conversations that we had was a very upfront conversation around this, sort of kind of decision making. A lot of us get stuck in these loops around, is it the right, is it going to be okay? Like, what if I put all this time and energy in and I don't like it? What if I invest in this thing and it's not worth it? What if I pick the wrong paint? What if this isn't the right brush? And until they're absolutely sure it's like a guaranteed outcome, they don't do anything. And I don't know anybody who really like succeeds that way, to be perfectly honest. I think you have to, as one of my coaches says, you have to show up. You just have to show up every day, and you have to try stuff. Even if that's I'm a big fan of like trying stuff in small ways. Like when I got into resin work, I don't know if I have, it's buried in there somewhere. Like I had just like this piece of wood that I would just like, I'd put paint on it and put resin on it. What does that do? How about some pencil, put resin on it? Can I draw on that? No. How do I solve that? And I'm doing it on this like little piece of wood, like this big. I'm not like, I see this thing on Instagram and I've got to go figure all these things out so that I can get that goal. I'm like, I want to enjoy the process, right? Like I want to sit down and play with materials and see what they do and actually enjoy that, rather than I need to figure out exactly the right material so I can buy 20 gallons of it.
Yeah, the enjoying the process, thinking about your daughter drawing and stuff. It's funny how quick we lose that. Thinking about my vision, I'm never painting on anything specific. It's not like, oh, I'm painting a big job or whatever. I'm just enjoying painting, and I think we forget that. We forget that real easy. that the enjoyment part was why we wanted to do this.
There's a good question in the chat. Maybe we
Yeah,
can,
I'll pull it up for you.
pull it up.
What are your guys' thoughts on being otherwise happily dedicated to a 9-to-5 job and personal life and leveraging art as a mental health strategy, but all the non-art obligations tug at you? Oh, it's funny. You're coming from the opposite end as me. Like, you get to enjoy your art and that's purely for fun. I have the opposite challenge of art is the 9-to-5. How do I find this fun outside of that? What are your
Yeah,
thoughts, Mark?
it is a good question. What I said before about focus blocks definitely applies here, and it's one strategy. I'll give you another one, but just to remind you, like focus blocks is like saying, I have another client who wants to spend more time, painting, and we realize like she has, she manages the house, she does all these other things, and so we created, we just said like, are there a couple times in the week that you could be like, these 2 hours, these 3 hours, I'm sitting in the studio. And then it's like, well, what if I don't feel creative? I'm like, I don't care. Just don't do anything else. I don't care if you go to the studio or go and sit at your desk in your bedroom with a piece of paper and you don't put anything on it. I honestly don't. I just want you to actually be there, because that's the practice. It's not making a great painting, because you're going to make a ton of not great paintings and drawings. Just get yourself, in the seat. So the other side of this too is, I don't know this person what your life is like, but it sounds like you have other obligations. I'm guessing some of those are to other people. this is the kind of thing that a conversation can be really valuable. So I'll give you this analogy, right? Like, and there's another article on my blog called The Puzzle of You. And this is kind of what this is about, where basically we are constantly changing all the time. And these changes sometimes happen slowly and over time, in part because, for many people, and I understand all of our life circumstances are different, but for many people, if our life is overall comfortable, say, we are kind of like our identity, our values, our activities, things that we like to do, all that stuff. Think about it like a puzzle piece. Like, that's the shape of you. And if you're comfortable, then you fit inside this puzzle of your job, your partner, your family, your friends, your activities, like all that kind of fits. But now you want to do something else. You want to actually spend more time making art, probably. Or for me, it's always, I want to spend more time at the jujitsu gym. But whatever it is, it doesn't matter. It's hard because you're changing your shape. If suddenly your shape is like this, and you're like, but I want to add some art, that's great, except for there's some stuff in the way. Maybe it's schedule, maybe it's somebody thinks it's silly, maybe it's a judgment somebody has. It could be all kinds of things. But if your life is comfortable, then it's keeping you where you are in a way. So they say the interlocking puzzle feels like a good analogy for all of my peers' lives. Yeah, exactly. An interlocking puzzle, exactly. So one of the things that we have to do is that we have to, the word we use is enroll. We have to enroll or have a conversation sometimes with some people to say, I've been thinking that this is something I really want to try to start doing, and I want to make space for it in this way. And I want, not like, screw you and you got to deal with it, but almost like you're kind of selling them on the idea. Like, you want to have the conversation with somebody where they're like, this does sound exciting. I can see how excited you are. I'm into this for you. How can I help? Right. And of course, if it's your family, if it's your partner, and you're like, you can help by watching the kids for an hour on Tuesdays or whatever it is, for you. Yeah. You'll find that your excitement and your connection to that value and that time for yourself, again, everybody's different, and you might run into problems. Like, sometimes I go into a conversation with my wife and I'm like, I've got a great idea, and it's going to totally, and it does not. And it's okay. Life is life. But a lot of the times you'd be surprised. You'd be surprised about how much support you get when you show your real enthusiasm, which is a very vulnerable thing. It's a hard thing to do.
I also think I don't know if the SJs, I think of it as South Jersey, stuck in South Jersey. Maybe that's not right, but stuck. It sounds like you're using art as this mental health thing. Like, you need your art for this. That sounds like an obligation to me. You're saying all these other obligations are pulling you away from that. I think maybe you just need to treat that art as an equal obligation, that your mental health is an obligation. For me, it's my Wednesdays. I go to the comic shop every Wednesday, and I get out of the studio at least for half a day, no matter what. Even like if I'm in the middle of a horrible deadline, that Wednesday is absolutely sacred.
That's amazing.
And my wife knows, and it's like, I go out, I have lunch with a friend, and it's like, it's the thing I look forward to, and I will not miss it. I've made it an obligation for me because I know I need that. I need that in my weekly routine. Yeah.
That's beautiful, Dan. I love that. And you nailed it, right? Like, what artists, as you said, like, we're sensitive, and we're so good, I think, in many cases there's exceptions here, right? But like, we're so good at sort of taking care of things in the world and seeing the world in a certain way. We often, I think, forget that in order to do that, like, we also have to be fed. Like, our mental health, our joy, our self-worth. Great. These slides are coming great. Just show, yeah.
About that, by the way.
Yeah, I like. Yeah, I mean, this is one that I give to a lot of people. James Clear wrote the book Atomic Habits. I did an interview with him years ago. I'm going to re-release it.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
I remember that. Yeah.
When his book just came out, I invited him to be on a podcast I was doing that you were on too, Dan. And he said yes, and he was on Good Morning America the next day. And I was like, wow, I got this guy before he realized how big he is. But in his book, I think it's his book, he gives an example of this, like, extremely famous ballet dancer or whatever, and he's sort of talking to her about, like, what are the habits and practices that you have and all this stuff. And he's like, so she trains for 5, 6, 7 hours a day, whatever it is. He's like, oh, so you have this habit of training. She's like, no, that's not my habit. She said, my habit is putting on my shoes and calling the car. Like
Hmm.
that's actually it. Because then, well, now the car's coming, so I've got to get in it. And now I'm in the car and it's going to let me out of my studio, so I've got to get out. And now I'm at the studio, so I should just probably do some dancing. But she's
That's
like, the habit is to get up and call that car.
hmm. The habit is starting, I guess. Yeah.
I mean,
Less the doing and more the starting. It's true.
yeah, yeah, getting in that state of flow. In the group that the Unleash Creativity Club, when you go through the course, we don't do this as much in the membership. It's definitely a part of the course. Like mostly it's the weekend days that are dedicated to just kind of what you said, like get into a flow state. I don't care if it's like sitting in grass and staring at the sky, or maybe it's having lunch with a friend, maybe it's making art. It really doesn't matter. Don't judge yourself for whatever that is. Maybe not Netflix, so there's some limits, but like, go and connect with yourself or connect with a friend in a way that feels nourishing to you. But self-worth, right? Okay, so this is a journey. This is a whole journey.
Yeah.
I
I think this is the one that we probably all struggle with the most.
Yeah, and why? I mean, why do you? I'm curious actually to hear why do you think that is? I don't have an answer. This is not a quiz. I'm just curious.
I actually think it's part of our personalities, at least for everybody, a little bit. I think we'd die of hunger if we weren't dissatisfied, wanting more all the time. I think we're hardwired to want more and to be a little dissatisfied. And I think some of us have that more than others. And I think my drive is a constant dissatisfaction. And so
Mm.
the way I improve even on myself is the fact that I'm dissatisfied with myself. And that dissatisfaction, I realize, it's hard to get rid of. It's maybe making me better, but I'm never okay with it. Is part of the problem. I'm never actually happy with where I'm at. You know.
Yeah. You might be familiar with the. I think there's like a video that's Ira Glass wrote this piece called "The
Oh,
Gap."
the hourglass quote about taste and stuff. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. Just this idea for people who haven't seen it, you can Google it. Google
sorry,
Ira Glass "The Gap."
encapsulate it for us.
Yeah, he basically says like, look, you've got good taste, so wherever you are, you're always like, oh, that's cool over there, and so you work to get there. And by the time you get there, now you've had enough experience and enough, life experience that you're like, oh, there's other stuff too that I like. So you're never actually satisfied with where you are. And I think that's one of the things that makes a creative, is that we're constantly seeing other things that we're excited about doing or could doing. But you're right. It can be, if we look at change as you said, if it's like I'm dissatisfied with myself and therefore I want to change, as opposed, I mean, the world that I want to create is where people are like, I'm actually real good and I'd like to improve.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I know. That sounds like the healthy way to approach
I mean,
that.
wouldn't it be great, right? But this is a lot of the work that I've done. I worked with a great teacher and mentor, former award-winning designer, this guy Peleg Top, and he created this program called the Creative High Growth Program, and I'm doing some work with him now on creating a new version of that. And this was a really intense program. It was 100 days, and we did multiple pages of journaling on prompts that he gave us, and we had to make a piece of art every single day. It wasn't anything that I've probably put up mostly on the internet. It was a lot of very expressive art, very intuitive art, but it was, God, talking about just showing up in your space every day. Like I had to do it. We traveled. I had to bring my materials with me. We went to like a sort of Burning Man type event. I had to have my stuff there and do it. Like it was not easy, but I did do it. And one of the things that I got out of that was just this feeling of like, because I'm here, I'm worth it, period. But also, imagine if imagine if your time at the drawing table every day was the goal, not the eventual painting or whatever. Like imagine if you're like, yeah, I sat down and I did my 30 minutes. Like, yeah, I'm pretty rock solid. I'm pretty awesome. Like maybe it didn't go on the internet. That's an external reward, right? So the self-worth and ultimately self-love, I believe, and from the work that I've done, this is what I've seen, is that it does have to come internally. It is great if you surround yourself with people who also get it. And, it's awesome if you're in, and this is, this is part of why I created the community that I wanted to create, and do sort of at the beginning, when you join the community, you go through a course, or essentially a training in these ideas, so that we can be a group of people who all kind of get it, and you can come and you can talk about art, you can talk about business, you can talk about your parents, like whatever it is, because it's all part of the tapestry of our lives. I'll say this too. There's so much. I think we should have done a 4-hour call. There's this idea of like a work-life balance, and I think it's bullshit, because it's this idea like you only get to live outside of work. Well, that's crap, because we're
Yeah,
mostly at
no,
work.
work is my life. My life is my work. Yeah.
Right. Well, not only that, but what what most people mean is like work and fun. And I'm like, okay, work and fun, those are two parts of a life. And one, again, this is another coaching exercise that I know I'm sure some people who are listening have come to one of my workshops about the life values wheel. But when you start to look at your life as another kind of interconnected puzzle, but there's work, and or let's say career, and then there's money, which is maybe actually different from career, and then your friendships, your primary relationship, if you have one or want one or don't, the ways that you have fun, the ways that you're growing and educating yourself, like that's actually all part of life. There's not just like work and life. There's all these different things. Now, it so happens that your day may have more time focused on one or the other, depending, but it doesn't mean that they don't all have to be in balance. I think back to the question of self-worth, this is where I really love to start with people, because they start to see that their self-worth is not attached to work or any one thing.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I think mentioning sitting at the drawing table, I have to remind myself all the time, like, this is what I was aiming for. Like, yeah, this was the thing. This
I
is what
asked
I'm
for this.
supposed to be happy doing. This is like I'm sitting at my easel right now. I've got an audiobook on, like I should. Like, it's the perspective of it most of the time that I just lose sight of. That sometimes I feel like I'm doing it for someone else just because of that deadline. I forget that ultimately I'm doing all of this for me. Like, it is for me. That's self-love.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like in those moments, and you can do this intentionally too. You can be like, every day at noon, I'm just going to notice where I am. And
Yeah, that's a good thought. I do it with other things, like every day I got to go do this thing. Like every day, just be a little appreciative and a little in the moment.
yeah, I admit that I find some of the sort of like, I'm doing 365 days of gratitude on social media. I find it like, honestly, I find it a little cringy, but it is a valuable exercise to do
It
on your
absolutely
own.
is. Yeah.
I mean, I don't, I don't think you need to necessarily, if you need to put it out there for accountability, awesome. But it is a valuable exercise. It's one that we did in my 100 days program. There's another one that I really like that my coach Peleg, the guy who runs the program, gave to me, and he would have us do just 5 things that we're grateful for, and they have to be things that we didn't do, right? Like it could be like, I love sidewalks, I'm so glad they exist, like whatever, like something that I didn't, that I didn't have a hand in. And then separately, like maybe once a week, we would do a yay me list, and it's exactly what it sounds like. You're like, yay me for getting my kid to school every day, yay me for showing up even when I was tired, yay me for getting the healthy option at dinner, like little stuff. It's not like yay me for the big award I got. Like, this is, again, it's like, I don't win a big award every week. Like if I need a big award to feel good, my life's going to be miserable.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
need to celebrate, and I actually like what we just came up with here. Like, every day at noon, I'm just going to like look around and be like,
Intentionality.
I have a house, I have food on the table, my kids are healthy. If they're not happy, it's their own damn fault. That kind of thing.
It's funny. I think I'm not a religious person, but I think when I have a lot of religious friends, and I think this idea of prayer, and lots of times it's specifically a morning prayer, it's an evening prayer, it's on certain times, is this thing that forces them to be thankful a
Mm,
little bit every day. And I think if many of us aren't religious, we don't do that. We lose sight. We are not deliberate about our thankfulness or our gratitude or even that presence. It's just this rat race constantly. And I like the idea of making it a habit. It's funny that that's not a habit for people that aren't religious usually. Should
It's
be.
I love that you connected that. I actually hadn't. I might steal that. I hadn't actually thought of that. But just like if you're in that if you're in a religious community,
Gratitude.
you probably
Simple
have.
gratitude.
Yeah. No, it is really simple. And I just want to say, like, it's certainly easy to feel grateful when things are going well, or like I have a roof over my head, like I'm in a good place, like, oh yeah, so it's easy. It's definitely harder when things are not going your way, but I think it's also important. Like another article, I keep pointing to my blog. I'll post a link somewhere. But I wrote about a really difficult experience that I had recently. I went to Burning Man, and I don't know if you heard, but like there was a hurricane one week, and then it rained another week, and it wasn't just like, oh, it's rainy. Like we couldn't leave our tents. Like we were in a tent for 2.5 days by ourselves. I had some friends that I could like sort of climb over to, but it was hard, and so that's one example I use about this to illustrate this idea of tragic optimism.
Hmm.
This is again another sort of coaching tool, which is like, I don't buy into the sort of like positive thinking, like let's just focus on the positive, and like, yeah, sure, the grass is green where you water it. I got it. But like, also sometimes things are just really hard. Like when I was, when I was really depressed in 2021, like I couldn't be like, okay, you know what? Chin up, let's just do it. Like, no, I was depressed. Like, that's not, you don't just like, oh, I'm going to think positive. So the idea of tragic optimism is, I think, a sort of healthier way to, again, it's all about integration, right? Like integrating this, like, okay, we acknowledge that this is hard. Like, I'm not getting the jobs I want. I'm not spending as much time with my family as I want. I'm not spending time. All of these things are true. And again, this is back to the beginning of the conversation. What are some things here that are good, that are working? Maybe it's not that many things. Maybe it's less things than I want, but like, let's just look at what's here, and let's figure out what we can, or what I in particular, can create from this landscape. And maybe it's like, I'm at Burning Man, I can't leave my tent. Like, all I can create is a little bit of a mindset shift. All I can create is just like, noticing where I am, and noticing that I'm not dead, and that I have food, and, just like these kinds of things. And then, it's the question of, what do I create from here? We, I didn't put this in the article, but like we had, all of our tents were like in this sort of circle. So like we couldn't actually get to each other, but we could see each other, like through, like if you open the flap, you could like see each other. So somebody put on music and we did like a dance off. Which sounds, it sounds like what it sounds like, but I got to tell you, it was like, it was life-saving in that moment, just to be like, we can create some joy. It's one of our values, is like joy and fun and humor. Like, and we're like, how do we create that with an intense set of obstacles going on right now? And I think we can do that in our lives.
Phenomenon on planes all the time, but like people who you're stuck on the tarmac for 6 hours, inevitably somebody's like going to do something that like once, and maybe you witness it yourself, where everybody starts rallying together, or they're singing, or something's going on.
Yeah.
And I think it's the adversity that forces you to change your outlook to it. It's when we don't have this adversity on this day-to-day slog that we're not trying to change our perception and make this bad situation good, or this self-loathing at the easel any better. We just kind of keep doing it, maybe because it's not horrible, that it just keeps going on. But
no, you're right. And actually, I'm remembering the sort of, title of this thing, Finding Fulfillment Through Creativity. And I want people to understand, it's not finding fulfillment through the art that you're making and selling. It's the creativity that you have that makes you want to do that you can apply in all these other areas, and really in every moment of your life, to have, to like have those moments of silliness and fun. Yeah, I think we're so used to also sort of hiding ourselves, because it's not practical, it's not useful. We're told this so often as kids, unfortunately, and so we sort of hide those parts of ourselves, and it feels very scary to be like, I'm a creative weirdo and I'm going to sing on a plane or whatever. But like, you'd be surprised how many people are like, oh my God, I needed this.
yeah.
There it is, the inner critic.
This is a strong one for me. This is it.
I think it is for everybody. It's funny. The only person I know who says she doesn't have an inner critic, and I actually believe her, is my wife.
She's a robot.
But no, not a, but like weirdly, like not like she is a very, she's a human, she has emotions, but also she does not wonder what other people think about it. Like it doesn't cross her mind. This is the inner critic again. I did a lot of work with Peleg on this, but it's so universal. Just this. There's a guy, Shirzad Shamin, and I did one of his programs around positive intelligence, and think what you want to think about it. He's done a lot of data and research on this idea, and he talks about the inner critic like a judge. Like you've got this judge in your head that's basically all the time sort of like saying like that was good, that was bad, that was stupid, whatever. And he has a quiz that you can take online, which gives you the kind of flavor of your judge, right? And mine is my far and away, and I knew this before I took the test, is the pleaser. There's also like the hyperachiever or the stickler or whatever. Like we all have these different flavors of what our critic likes to kind of crap on us about. But mine is always about like, oh, I've upset somebody. And we'll talk about the 4 kinds of fears in a little bit, but my inner critic, it's the thing that stops me from doing things because it might piss somebody off or hurt somebody's feelings or make somebody angry or they're not going to like it. And let's make it real concrete, right? Like you want to sell art, at some point you have to tell somebody how much your art costs. This is when the inner critic gets so loud for so many people, because at some point someone's like, well, how much is this? And you have to say a number, and the inner critic's like, don't do it. Like, just it's so awkward. Like you're gonna say it, and they're gonna be like, oh, it's not worth it. It's gonna feel terrible. Or they're gonna say it like, and that might happen. But there's actually, again, there's the same kinds of exercises that we've been talking about that we can use, not necessarily to quiet it down, and I'll say why in a second, but to strengthen kind of what I think about, or what I call the aligned self, like the self that really is that the source of that self-love and self-worth. Like just like the exercise I gave you before, you could almost visualize you're sitting at a table with this version of yourself that really just believes in you. That really just loves you for who you are, loves you for the mistakes you make, believes in you, and ask that person at that table, what advice do you have for me? What do I need to know? It might sound a lot like a pep talk. It often does in my journal. But the inner critic, the thing that I think people don't get about it, because they're just like, I just wanted to stop. I get it. The inner critic has a positive intention. Because the inner critic is you, right? Like all of these voices in our head, they're just us. The inner critic wants to keep you safe, right? Like it wants to keep you safe. It wants to make sure you don't get hurt. It wants to make sure you don't fail. But it's also operating out of fear, not out of courage. And so the options that it gives you is don't do that, don't do that, just stay small, just do what you were doing, don't try, like just, don't ask for the raise, don't ask for the whatever, because it's, because I don't want you to get hurt. The aligned self might say, okay, so what if you do ask and they say no? Nothing actually, and in fact, sadly, nothing changes. But but nothing actually changes. You're not any different or better or worse of a person than before you asked. What if you sit down and the drawing is crap? Well, now you've spent 30 minutes drawing, and you don't have a drawing that you're going to show people, but you did that, right? And that's value. So the inner critic is, again, it's like a weird kind of cheerleader in a way, but it's like cheering you to like just get off the field so you don't get hurt. If that makes sense.
It does make sense. Even just thinking about criticism, it's funny. I think I got this term from you, a critique sandwich. When we were both teaching Smart School, you were talking about the idea of starting a critique. Like there's kind of this etiquette for critiquing anybody, somebody else, and giving them some advice that they might not want to hear, something that could be improved about themselves or their work. You start with this idea of a compliment to kind of soften them up.
Yeah.
And then the critique, and then end with the compliment, some encouraging word. It's this sandwich. And I'm not very good about it because I don't do it to myself, but it is kind of the etiquette when you critique other people. And it's funny, we don't do that with ourselves at all. We don't.
Yeah, no, we don't. We don't.
On the other end of it.
But that's brilliant. I actually hadn't even, because like what if we, this is the thing about all of this stuff is that like there's no, I can't hand you like a pill or a book that's like this fixes it. Like this is like anything, a constant practice. I was having a conversation with somebody in the group who was asking me like, so do you naturally just sort of think this way? Or like, I'm like, absolutely not.
No.
Like I've been fortunate to have years of training and different communities that were really supportive of this work and this kind of thinking. So I have lots of time to practice, and I have communities now that I either, you know, pay to participate in or run or whatever, where I can have these kinds of conversations where I can be reminded that it's like every day that I wake up, I'm worth it. And so the inner critic, while I want to just acknowledge and appreciate what it's trying. In fact, what you get really good at through some of this coaching work is just noticing when these voices start to happen. So like, you know, you find yourself like, this happens to me like everybody else, where like it's like 2 hours into your day and you're like, you know, I actually haven't started on the thing that I really want to start. Good indication that the inner critic is saying something. So you might want to just take a minute, just stop, don't push through, just stop and be like, what does it want me to know? What is it afraid of? It's afraid of me getting tired. It's afraid of me not knowing what to write for the next article or whatever. And like, that's okay. And again, back to what we were talking about before, and I forget if it was stuck in Salvatore's, stuck in SJ or what, but yeah, just, okay. So the aligned self wants me to know that actually all I really need to do is go sit down at the desk and open that document. Okay, I can do that. No, well, now I'm, you know, like the lady, like now I'm in the car. Okay, well, now I've got to get out of the car. Now I'm typing. It's not always that easy, but again, like that's why it's a practice and not you know, like you don't go to the gym and get in shape and then never go to the gym again. Like it's that, if I told you that that's what I did, you'd be like, you're an idiot. But like these are mindset workouts at the end of the day. You do have to, I have to keep doing them. It's not like, oh, I got them and now
Funny you say that, because that's literally how I handle. I'll start to work out for about 2 weeks, and I'll be like, "Damn, that happened fast," and then never work out again for like 3 years until I get fat again, and then it's like, "Oh, I'll do it again." But I was talking to Julie Bell about this,
an
and
incredibly fit person. Yeah.
yeah, and it's her lifestyle, and
Yeah.
she said, and it sticks with me. She says, "I don't think about going to the gym and getting in shape and the goal of being in shape." She says, "What I think about is I'm the kind of person that goes to the gym every day."
That's right.
And that's just it. She's just that kind of person. That's her objective. And then the rest is just go to the gym and do the thing that you want to be that person. It doesn't matter if she got in shape or not. You know, it's I think about that quite a bit. If I were to be good about getting in shape, it would be really just be a lifestyle of like, I'm the kind of person that exercises every day. I'm the kind of person that appreciates myself every day, or whatever it is, you know?
That's right. James Clear calls that identity-based habits.
Hmm.
Yeah, if you're like, okay, I'm the kind of person who, you know, puts his hands in the dirt every Wednesday at noon with his kids, or, you know, it doesn't have to be that specific. It's usually more general. Like I'm, you know, I'm the kind of person who puts his I'm the kind of person who makes his creativity a priority. Okay, like maybe I go through a week and I didn't do anything. I'm like, okay, you weren't the person that you want to be this week. What is one thing? And this is what I come back to this so many times with clients. I'm like, forget the big goals. What's one thing that you can do this week? You know, like maybe it's just to make a list of the gyms nearby, or, you know, go and sit in my garden and think about where I want to plant something. Like it doesn't have to be a big multi-step process. In fact, getting started shouldn't be. You know, that's why getting started isn't, I need to get started on that paper. No, I need to, you know, I need to go upstairs where my computer is. That's my first step. So if I'm not on my computer, I'm not writing. You
That
said
idea
something
of,
earlier. Oh, go ahead.
wanting to be a certain person, that sounds like that top tier of that pyramid, that vision. That's who I am. It's not what I'm doing, it's who I am. How do we get there then? If we know that's what we want, how do we actually achieve this stuff?
Good question. Actually, can we answer that in combination with the question that's in the chat? Because I
Yeah,
think they're
absolutely.
related.
Let's toss that up here. All right, and I'll move our cameras there. Is this the one you're referring to? Is there an opposing inner cheerleader we can cultivate, or is that just what we call our ego, or self-esteem, or even self-delusion that we can feed?
It's a bear trap of a question. I don't think about it as ego or self-esteem, in part because just like, confident, it's like confidence and arrogance. You they might show up the same way, but like when you see it, you're like, not that.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
There's an important distinction there.
there's
Yeah.
an important
One is
distinction.
knowing your limits, both good and bad, and the other is thinking I'm the best. Yeah.
Yeah. So I said this before, and I'll say it again. I think about it like the aligned self, or I think, Dan, you rightly said, like, if you do sort of look at your neurological levels, the identity level, like, who is the kind of person, who's the kind of person that I am? Your aligned self just knows not only that that's where you're going, but that's who you are right now. I had a great analogy that I
Saying
think this.
aligned self. Can you explain aligned self to us?
Sure. My coach calls it the higher self. I think about it like the aligned self. When I say aligned, I mean aligned with your values, aligned with your vision, aligned with your, so if aligned with your identity, aligned with your purpose. So if I'm being my aligned self, I am making choices that are being those things right now. I'm in alignment with my vision, my values, my purpose. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So is there an opposing inner cheerleader? Yes, it's this aligned self. And there's lots of ways to cultivate this. One way that, again, my coach Peleg taught me, which was really, really valuable, was, and I was not a journaler before this, guys, but I became one because and we did this on our coach training too, in different ways. All of these sort of visualization, imaginary conversations that you're having. Again, like if I imagine a conversation with a table of mentors or people, or people who I want to give me advice, at the end of the day, I'm sitting here imagining in my head, so those voices are me. But by taking this this concept of like an inner critic or an inner judge and putting it sort of on the other side of the table and almost interviewing it in my journal, that's one way to start to sort of separate yourself from those ideas. And the same way you can do with the aligned self. If I were to ask the version of myself that is totally aligned with my vision, my values, my purpose, and my identity, if I was to talk to that person and ask them whatever questions I want to ask them, what would they say? And you journal out the questions and the answers. It's just going to feel probably a little silly the first time you do it, honestly. And this is why I was glad I did it inside of an ongoing program, because you don't just, I've not seen anyone just do this once and go, again, I'm fixed. I never have to go to the gym again. It is a practice. I do it regularly myself. I don't do it every day the way I was doing it before, but by journaling, or even just imagine, like if you're just like, I'm not going to write, fine. Like if you can do it in your head, but really try to imagine, like literally imagine like you're sitting at a table with this best version of yourself and this other version that, again, wants to keep you safe, but is just so afraid of everything that might happen. Asking them questions like, what do you want me to know about myself? What would you suggest? What do you think a small step that I could do today would be? What's one way that I could unleash, for me, it's unleash creativity. For you, it might be something else, but you can also, it doesn't have to be around purpose. It can be like, I am a creative person. Okay. So what does my aligned self say? Like, where are there some areas where I could be more in alignment with that sense of self that I want to cultivate? There's a couple of things here that I want to mention. I'm trying to think if I have this in the group program I run. Like I said, we're going to be launching the program again in June, and we're changing things up a little bit because frankly, I was running a 12-week program. It's a little bit of a heavy lift, both time for people and also for the folks, me and Erica Lynn Schmidt, who's my community manager running it. So we're going to be doing sort of a 3-week version of the course. It is definitely going to include this this worksheet that I created. You can find them out there if you Google it. But I have one that I specifically created that blends the School of Life Design and some of the other work that I've done. But it's called an energy audit, or there's other names for it. But it's just this idea that it's another kind of listing. Like you list out the sort of the things in your life, and you put them in one of two columns. When I'm done with this activity or person or whatever, do I feel drained? when I'm done with this activity person or whatever, do I feel like I have more energy? And you just do those two columns. Again, for the parents, kids are in both columns. It's fine. Um, like it's okay. But and the goal also isn't to be like, oh, I'm going to get rid of everything that drains me. Like, that's probably not possible. Like some things you just have to, like, you have to put food, you have to earn money, or you have to take care of somebody if they're sick, or like these things happen. But I wouldn't say, how can I change this whole thing? I would say, what's one thing I could change? Or how can I engage in this activity and make it more of an energy fuel for me as opposed to a drain?
Nice.
I want to say one thing also,
kid
about
column all the way. Just thinking, I feel like that's a longer term investment. It'd be like asking, like, about going to the gym. Like, do you enjoy this while you're in the middle of your 50th rep? It's like, no, I don't enjoy this right now. But the feeling you get when you leave the gym is what you're really kind of going
Oh,
for.
no, I mean, amen. It's like I go to, like I said, I go to jujitsu, and I go just about every morning. It's just become part of my, my routine. And there are absolutely days when I'm just exhausted. I didn't sleep well. I got up at 7 with my kid. I got her to school. Like there's a ton of days, but I don't even think about it anymore, because I know that the feeling I have after is what I'm working towards. It's that feeling that that feeling of accomplishment, that I did it. It's also physically awesome. and I totally love it. But yeah, like that's also why I've been more consistent with this practice than I have any other physical practice. So somebody might say, go to the gym. I don't actually like going. I haven't been to the gym probably since I've known you, Dan. Like I don't go to gym.
I need to do an activity. Like
I don't. Yeah. Well,
exactly.
exactly. So I need to go to the gym is a doing. I am a healthy person as a being. And you can ask the healthy person, well, okay, so let's get creative. What are some things that you can do to be healthy? Well, I can go to the gym. I can go for a walk. I can go rowboating. Like what, I don't know, whatever, like find something that you actually like doing that meets that deeper need and that deeper, that deeper thing that you're working towards.
We got another topic for you. This one's one of my favorites.
Creative block. I got no answers for that. Let's go to the next one. No, okay.
No, true. I feel like this is probably the same one.
No. I was kidding. I was kidding about the creative block. No. We can talk about creative block. For the thing that I really want to say about creative block is, it's true that I know people who like just don't really ever deal with it, and awesome for them. Again, don't compare yourself to other people. I certainly have dealt with it. I have certainly like been at times, and it's the worst when like you have an assignment and you have to actually get something done and you're like, I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
The thing that I would just want to say more than anything is to notice the judge in the room, the inner critic, when that starts to happen.
It's always loud.
Yeah, worse than the I don't have any idea is the see, I knew it. Like you're actually not a great artist. Like a great artist would have ideas. A great artist would do this. You're not like that. Why don't you actually call them and say you can't do the assignment? Or like before even like dealing with like, okay, how do you get through creative block, is I would do the work around identifying that inner critic, and whatever you're going to do, journal, visualize, whatever you have to do to acknowledge it, separate it from your actual self-worth, and then get back to the task at hand.
I deal with this a lot because I'm working day to day, and sometimes
every day.
There's an old adage that inspiration is for amateurs, pros just get working, and there's certainly
right?
Truth in that creativity finds you in the process, inspiration, but it's hard. It's super hard some days to get into it. Are you the person that told me the analogy about skiing and looking at trees, Marc? Because I think about it quite often. There's this
and yeah, no, I don't remember.
Idea. I think a lot of this creative block. It's funny. It's this destructive cycle. That critic gets loud, and then all of a sudden, it's all these don'ts and no's and all these things that can't do's, and you forget all the stuff you can do. And I heard somebody once, they were talking about the idea of perception, and that if you're skiing, and all you see are trees in front of you, you're just going to be like, oh my God, I'm going to die. There's no way you're going to avoid a tree. It's just trees everywhere. But if your perception is looking for a path through the trees, all you see is path through the trees.
That's
And
great.
it becomes a much clearer thing. And I think a lot of creative block comes down to this perception of all we see is obstacles. And we forget to enjoy. We forget the joy of painting. We forget the fact that we don't have to do this, that we get to do this thing, that there's some outcome, there's the potential in everything for the best painting you've ever done. And we just sort of lose sight of that. And all we can think of are trees. And then before you know
That's
it,
right.
yeah, you're hitting trees.
No, that's right. And it gets back to the gratitude practice, the yay me, like all of that is like you said, like it's finding paths. And it's also asking, to answer the question again, it's asking that more aligned self to get creative about those paths. I have one sticky note on my wall, and it says, "How could it be done?"
Good one. I keep a fortune cookie thing on my easel, similar things, little mantras that I remind myself of. But
Yeah, but it is that it's that reminder that like maybe you're having a bit of a mindset breakdown and all you're seeing is trees. Just remember there is always a way it could be done. Maybe it's not the way you want to do it. Maybe it's not the best way. Like we've all done jobs where we're like, I just have to get through it. Here's how I can do it in a way that is gonna make the client happy and be, a good, painting or whatever. That might be the way that it gets done. You might find something even, even better than the way that you thought you were going to do it if you can get creative about possibility. Again, I have all these conversations with people as as a coach, and a lot of it is really just about unleashing creativity. They're like, well, I've got these things and I can't do it. And I'm like, okay, well, how could someone do it? Like if someone like if someone had more money or more time or whatever, and they're like, oh, well, they could do this and that. Well, is there a way that you could do that with the resources you have? And they're like, well, and suddenly like now the trees are
looking
parting
at
a little bit.
solutions, yeah.
Yeah.
There's it's a Marcus Aurelius quote. It's a Stoicism thing, but I'll credit my friend Autumn Sky Morrison told me this, and I
Yeah.
swear it is the most woo-woo thing, but it's changed my life, and I think of it all the time. She says, every time you're getting ready to say the words "I have to," you replace them with "I
I
get
get
to."
to. Yeah.
And this is meant for a lot of aspects of life, but I do it specifically with my art. That every time I get a job and it's something ridiculous that I don't want to paint or I don't know how to paint, I stop and I replace that with I get to do whatever it is on this painting. And I think if
Yeah.
you're having a creative block and you don't know what to do, it's because again, you're thinking all those trees rather than the opportunity for you to do the thing you get to do on this piece. And I swear I tell myself that like 3 times a day. I get to do a certain thing. And then all of a sudden now I'm instilling me into this and I'm like
Yeah.
doing the thing I wanted to do. It's totally independent of the job. It doesn't matter if the job is a girl with a ferret on her shoulder that's stupid. I get to do the good lighting. I get to do the cool composition. And all of a sudden the job doesn't seem so bad. It starts getting good. Yeah.
Yes, and I think it applies to everything. I'm thinking about like, I have to go grocery shopping. Well, I actually get to go grocery shopping for these like 2 kids that I have and this wife that I have. Like
Yeah.
I get to do this. Like there's a lot of people, first of all, that would love to do it the way that I do it. And I get to do it because I've built a life where that is an obligation of mine that I wanted, that I do want, that I continue to want.
Yeah.
It's this idea. I think this is a really powerful idea, what you just said, because it's what it is it's like it again, it's a little bit woo, but it's about choosing your life. Not to say like we all have ultimate choice and can do whatever we want. I don't know that that's actually true, but sometimes we're, like with deadlines or like, something's due or like there's just too many things or like our car got stolen a week ago, all these
Oh,
things. Yeah, don't go to Montreal with a nice car, guys. Rent a car. Um, but I, and yeah, like I didn't want to have to go to the airport to rent a car, but like we have the resources that we could do that. and I get to do that for my family so that they can, not be as stressed with the situation that we were in, or, I actually, and I don't even have to think about this, but I get to take my kid to school every day. I love it. I love it. Like, we spend our 30 minutes together, whether we're in the car, on the train, or whatever. And again, there's exceptions to all of this stuff, especially when it relates to kids. But like, for the most part, like, I just love it. Like, I get to spend time with this person who's like this great person that I like really like, and also, it's hard to be like, I get to get up at 7 a.m., but I do. I get to get up at 7 a.m. to do this.
You get to go to bed early.
I get to go to bed early. I do. I actually do. I do like that part of it. In my old age. I'm curious how many more slides we have, because I'm looking at the time.
Maybe like 3 more. There's the fears. We'll pull them up here.
What do we got? Because I don't want to.
4 kinds of. It's okay if we run a little over.
Okay.
Fears, courage, confidence, and
that's on brand.
But I really do. I know it sounds so woo-woo, but truly, that little thing, it all comes down to perception. Like, happiness it's a perception, and I think the more I stay focused on that, the better I do.
I'll say this too. This has been an awesome conversation, and a lot of fun. And there's a lot of ideas about things that people could try. I want to warn against the New Year's, day, I'm going to go to the gym, 5 days a week kinds of bullshit. Pick one thing that you heard from this conversation, just one. I don't care if it's the morning thing, or the not having your phone on, or the I get to change. Pick one and just try to do that for like a week. Like, I love the I get to thing, Dan. I think that would be a great one for people to try. But it's the kind of thing you can be like, all right, set a reminder in your phone for, a couple hours into your day, that like, what is the thing that you're doing right now that you get to do, and just to remind yourself it's that gratitude, or, whatever it is. I wouldn't do gratitude and yay me and I get to, and an energy audit and and like change it, and focus blocks. Like, I wouldn't take it all on in a week. This work that I do, I'm very, very clear that it takes time. It's why I don't do there's one kind of like one-off session you can do with me, but I don't just sort of meet with people like, oh, let me get a coaching session, because it doesn't. I mean, it might be great, but what you need is that kind of like, just continue, like they said, like, just show up, just keep showing up in that space, and these things will start to emerge for you. I've seen it time and time again. So just want to work. A lot of good stuff in here, guys. Don't go try it all at once. Do try it at home. Don't try it all at once.
Yeah, it's any learning. You got to take it in baby steps, I think, a little bit. And that get to rather than have to thing, I'll also expound that. I think oftentimes when I say that to myself, it's not just about gratitude, that yes, I get to paint all day long. It's when I say the I get to part, I realize all the things I'm not doing that I could be doing, because I'm so worried about the other person. I'm worried about the client. I'm worried about the deadline. And I forgot all the stuff I could and get to do. That's where the problems come in, because I just put that aside. I take me out of the equation, but the I get to it instantly gets me through any creative block I have. It's like, oh, I get to draw like when I was 13. Like, I could do anything I want, I'm not doing it. That's why I'm unhappy, is because I'm not doing that.
Yeah, no. And I'm gonna keep coming back to kids. My son is 13 now, so he's like right at the beginning of those teenage years.
Age, man. It's the best.
It's
the things you love when you're 13,
right,
are the things you're gonna love for the rest of your life. That's it. That's it. They're hardwired.
Well, he is gonna love Fortnite into his old age. I mean, like I sort of stopped playing video games when I started working in video games. Like, I saw how the sausage was made, and I was like, I don't know. But I still like games, and I used to play a lot of them. It was like, really good. A lot of like GoldenEye back in the day, like all that stuff. But one day I went down. I've never felt so old. I was like, hey, just like, let me play Fortnite with you. He's like, and I'm like, oh, look, I play games, like,
Could have ruined my rating, Dad.
No, it wasn't even like he made an avatar for me. He gave me the controller. First of all, and he's like frustrated me. I'm like, dude, you just handed me the controller. I don't know what the buttons do. Let me figure it out. He's like, just. But even after that, where I kind of knew how to get around, like we I don't know if you know Fortnite, like you sort of fly into like a little island and you got to shoot everybody or whatever. It was so like the gap between our skill levels was so huge. He basically like he had me follow him over, and I'm like, where are we going? Where are we going? And he like took me to a little room. He's like, hide in here. And then he went, murdered everybody and came back. He's like, okay, we won.
He's your self-critic.
I was like, oh my God. Oh my God. No, it was, I mean, I thought it was kind of funny, but anyway, the four kinds of fear, we don't have to spend too much time on here, but I think it's an interesting distinction that I got from my coaching training, is that, and there's obviously there's like a million kinds of fear, but like the sort of the four,
there's like a million kinds. I feel like it's one of the main driving factors in almost everything we do, honestly. Like,
yeah, for good or evil. I mean, Robin Williams was interviewed, and they were like, why do you continue to show up? Like, you're rich. Like, why do you continue to show up on these stages?
yeah.
Why do you continue to do this work? Why do you continue? And he, like, in an instant, he's like, fear.
It really is. It's at the root of so much stuff. Like, I think the deeper and deeper you dig, it's fear of starvation, fear of loneliness, fear of like people say in bad relationships because of the fear, not the love. It really does drive.
Oh yeah, fear. That's a great one, right? Like, I'm in this bad relationship, whether it's a work relationship or a romantic one or a friendship. Like, but what? Like, I don't have anything. In those particular cases, you know, I think one of the best things we can do is start to do this visualizing. Like, okay, let me imagine what my life is like without this thing that's not working right now, and let me figure out, like, how could it be done? What are the things I'm afraid of? I'm afraid of having no money because I don't have a job or whatever. Like, well, how could I solve that? There's so many different exercises for this. I don't have time to go into them now, but the four kinds of fear, I have it up here because I always forget the fourth one whenever. It's always a different one too. I can always name three, and then I'm like, I don't know what the other one is. But there's obviously, there's fear of failure, right? So there's this what in the coaching world we call victim identification. Like, I'm gonna go try this thing and they're gonna laugh at me, they're gonna like me, whatever. There's also fear on the other side. There's fear of success, which is in many ways kind of about conflict. Like, if I'm successful, then people are going to say stuff about me. If I'm successful, then I have to operate at this higher level, and I don't feel like I'm ready, and whatever. Like, it's like so the fear of actually getting the thing that you want, which sounds weird, but it's a big one. The two other ones are fear of dreaming, and I see this a lot with even creatives and clients when I'm like, okay, let's do some vision. And they're like, I literally can't kind of imagine any of my life outside of what it actually is. I'll give you some tools for all these too. And the last one, near and dear to my heart, fear of upsetting people, which is connected to some of the other ones, but like, I don't want to put myself out there. I don't want to make myself the center of attention. I don't want to go for this thing, because then I'm going to upset somebody and I have to like deal with it. But there are ways of addressing all of these different things. The fear of dreaming as a really, like, this to me is like the most esoteric one. It's like, what do you mean you can't? Like, I could always say like, oh yeah, like I want a big house, fancy car, like I can think of things, right? But the real dream is about, like what we talked about before, is about like how we feel, and sort of imagining that we get to, or that we that get to be in a life that is truly fulfilling, and all of our needs and wants are met. Like, this can be it's weird to think about, but like some people just get very shut down about it, or they it's actually a hard thing to do. So one example of a kind of thing that you can do is stuff that we've actually already talked about. Is, okay, so you're having a hard time imagining. Well, you can probably imagine yourself sitting at a table with somebody that you like and respect, a good friend, a mentor, even somebody maybe you don't know. Maybe you're like, Taylor, I want to sit at a table with Taylor Swift and talk to her. Like, just imagine if you asked one of these people, probably better if it's somebody who knows you a little bit. But if you ask one of these people, what are some dreams I could have for my life, and really take yourself out of the picture. It's a surprisingly effective way to literally get out of your own way. for some of these other ones, again, a lot of this stuff, I will say, and I obviously, I benefit if you choose to do this, but it does work really, really well with another person, with a coach who can actually sort of push you, hold space for you, not judge you. For example, the fear of, I'm just sort of looking at my notes here. Like the fear of upsetting people. This is intimately tied with self-worth, right? Like if I was absolutely confident in my self-worth, if I absolutely had self-love, I wouldn't have that fear, right? Because if someone's upset, but I'm living my values in a way that I'm very clear about, then I mean, I don't want to upset people, but I'm much less like, it's not going to stop me from doing the thing.
Mm.
Right? Like you think about, you see in the news, like these, people who do brave things, acts of courage, or people like the unions just won a couple of huge wins in the US for workers' rights. And you think about those people, and this gets into the courage stuff too that we'll talk about, but they're very clear on their values. They're very clear on their self-worth, and they are fighting for something that they believe. Now, they also upset a bunch of people. And whatever side of the thing you're on, you can at least acknowledge that they're coming from a place of self-worth, which is allowing them to take action despite not just the fear in that case, but the knowledge that people are going to be upset. I forget who said it, but who said it was like, if you haven't pissed somebody off by 11 a.m. every day, you're not really doing anything interesting.
Oh, no.
I mean, take that with a grain of salt.
Sure, irritate my wife before you even wake up.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it might be, like I said, exceptions to every one of these rules. But these fears are sometimes, it's not necessarily where we start, but when someone is, if you're someone who's like, I really want to make time for art, and if you're really honest with yourself, and you've been thinking that for a few months or a few years, it's maybe time to look at like, okay, so which of these fears is actually getting in the way? Oh, I'm afraid of doing it because the only time I can do it is at this time at night, and that would mean that my wife has to make her own dinner or whatever. Like, okay, so that's a fear, and let's address that. Can we get creative about ways to do that? Is it a conversation? Is it that you like make the meal in advance? Like, there's ways to do these things, and that's one of the things that I love to do with people. Yeah.
I think this fear goes deep. I think even if you did get past the fear of that, and then you're sitting at your easel working, the working process is full of fear. I think like even like creatively, we start doing things out of fear because I know I can't paint that way, or I know I'm no good at edges, or I'm not good at faces, so I'm just doing this other thing. And like we literally let it guide our whole painting. We let it guide our whole career. We let it guide our lives. Like it
Yeah.
really does,
Yeah.
like from the small to the large. Yeah.
Yeah. I think with and again, I know we're going over, but there's whole books written on this stuff. I would say if someone was going to take something away from this conversation, is that
There's
fear
literally
is
a book, Art and Fear, that I believe you
right.
gave.
Right. No, that's that's a great book. And is that Pressfield, where he talks about resistance?
Is it Pressfield? I
Stephen
don't know.
Pressfield. I think it was Stephen Pressfield. Yeah, wrote. He talks about resistance and how to get through resistance, and resistance is often in the form of some kind of fear. But at the end of the day, I mean, if I could say, like, there's one sort of overarching thing that is at the core of how I work with people. Fear is very much about like an outcome that you don't want, something that you're moving away from. And so, like, the example of like you're in a relationship that is bad for you, but there's this fear of what might happen if you leave. Maybe it's a job or something else. The best solution for any of this stuff is to do whatever work you need to do, talking with friends, working with a coach, being part of our community or whatever, is to start to form a thing that you want to move towards. It's much right. Like this is maybe a little crass, but like it's easier to leave a toxic romantic relationship if you've got a budding new relationship that you're moving to. Now, obviously, like, I'm not suggesting people go cheat on people, but I am saying, like, it's easier to leave a job if you've got another job lined up, right? Like if you've got another better job that you're really excited about, it's easier to leave a job. It gets a little tricky and nuanced if you're not sure if the other job is better, but you think it might be. I've done that. Like I had an offer in 2011 or whatever to be a full-time designer at this company, and it was a very sweet paycheck, and I said no because I also had an offer from a game company, and I wanted to give that a shot, and it did not go great. I did okay. I mean, I think my work was fine, but it was a terrible working environment. The people were great. The people that I worked with on my team, probably one of the best teams I've ever worked with, like some of the most creative, brilliant minds in that world. But just the environment was not great. So in many ways, like it was a failure. And but again, we're creative, so we have to create something new from where we are. And so I at that point, fortunately, I think at that point I was already involved with Smart School, so I really leaned into that and was able to start to take the things that were joyful in my life and put some energy into that to see if they could grow to replace this this other thing.
Let's equate that a little bit to actual art practice. So let's say you've got your time at the easel finally, and you're just afraid to do this thing that you've been wanting to do. It's not about finding a different path. Like I'm afraid to paint. I want to paint like Greg Manchess, but I'm afraid to paint like Greg Manchess, real loose. I want to loosen up. Maybe the alternative is just tighten up, a different job over here. But I want to do that. How do I get over that fear to do that thing?
What's the fear?
The fear, what would be? They would probably be a fear of failure. Like I just can't paint like Greg Manchess. Inadequacy. I'm going to fall short.
Right.
Or maybe I'm going to make a bad job and it's an important job and I'm going to upset somebody else.
Right. I would say general rule, like maybe don't take an important job and do something for the first time on that job, like
that's
as a ground rule. But no, it's a great example. And I think the answer is very much from this world that I'm in, which is first of all to address the fear and acknowledge it as as okay. Something that we do is we have these like cycles of like, I'm afraid I'm doing it and I didn't do it, and now I'm judging. Now I'm like an idiot because I haven't done it for 2 days, and like it just right, and then you never start. Not to say just sit down and start, but if there's the thing that I would tell people to do in that instance is, how could you do this? How could you do this in a way that where there's absolutely no risk? Usually that means doing it in a way that's small, like I was talking to you about my resin thing. Like it was a scratch board, like it was not a piece that I was working on. I didn't sit down and try to do a piece in resin. I sat down and tried to learn the materials. So maybe you just get a little piece of canvas, get a canvas pad, and get a couple of colors of paint and just see if you can play with the strokes. That is it. Start there. And you'll learn quickly whether or not you actually enjoy working with it at all before you decide you're going to take on a portrait. Because I think part of the pressure with that is that if you're like, I want to paint like Greg Manchess, or anybody, saying I'm going to do it on this big piece, or even like a face or something that looks like something, there's a lot obviously that can go wrong and will go wrong. I forget who said this, but I love it. It's like, no one learns how to do something for the first time and looks good doing it. like just work with a coach or talk to friends, like understand that and set the expectation for yourself that you're out to make some garbage. Like go ahead and allow yourself, in fact, make that
outlook.
Make that your goal. To make a bunch
of make the garbage. Like I'm going to try the Greg Manchess thing on a small, unimportant piece, and I know it's going to be bad. The goal was I tried it, not the goal was I made a good painting.
Well, and specifically to art with this one, like I think back to my training at art school, and honestly, like the class, and this is whatever it is, like the first class I took was the foundations class, where they get like a box or a sphere or a triangle, put a light on it, maybe another light, and they give you charcoal newsprint, 18 by 24, and they're like, you have 3 hours to do that. And you're like, what? I loved that class so much. I loved it so much because it had nothing to do, like, I mean, yes, like it would be great if it really looked realistic, but at the end of the day, I got 3 hours just to like dork around with this material, and I got to know it really, really, really well in that time. And that, more than any, like, I want to paint like this person, is gonna, I think, serve you. So when I think about, like, I want to paint like Greg Manchess is a goal, I would be thinking about what's the process that gets me to the goal. Not sitting down and making a painting like Greg Manchess. That is over there. That's later. That's something that will happen if I do what? If I sit down and paint with oils every day, if I make a sketch of an apple every day, like what? I don't care what it is. It's going to be different for everybody. But it's about breaking it down and actually making it into these small steps that you enjoy in the process of doing.
And the joy is hard part. It's another piece of advice I really try to live by was from my friend Patty, who's an author. And it's amazing how much of the problems writers have are the exact same problems artists have, because it's not a medium thing. It's an outlook and fear thing. But
Yeah.
she says, when you sit down to work, sit down to play, and you'll do pretty good work. But if you sit
Yeah.
down to work, it's all going to be crap. But
Yeah.
that play changes everything. It
Yeah.
changes the outlook. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's so easy to say, and I get that it's hard to do, but if you're having a hard time playing, like, to stay with the analogy, it's about creating a sandbox where, where you feel so maybe you don't want to play on this big. This is the mistake that I see so many people, like, they're like, I'm going to do a really big piece in this totally new way, and like I'm going to take on all these new things. And I'm like, maybe pick one. Like I said earlier, like pick one thing and play with it. Like pick it, do it small. Like do the I get to, just set a reminder in your phone every day. Like play with that. Just play with it for a little while. Once that's actually there for you and you don't have to think about it anymore, now start to add some other stuff.
Hmm. It's
Yeah.
funny. You've made drastic changes in your artistic career. I feel like, and just totally experimental stuff. I feel like this must have come up for you in those process of trying new things. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I have. I mean, I'm not going to say it's a recipe for making millions of dollars on your art, but uh, um, like I think you've done it very differently, and have certainly made more than I have on the art side. But yeah, I mean, I think back specifically to 2016. I was I was teaching smart school at the time, but I was also working with Rebecca, and she was really pushing me, and I did more traditional. I started doing more traditional work. Um, and I remember I had this painting that I still think was pretty good, actually. And I took it to Rebecca, and I'm like, I'm having a hard time seeing where to go with this. Like, I don't know. What do you see? And she was like, yeah, no, it's a good painting. She's like, it's a good painting, but it could be a great painting. And I'm like, oh, okay, like, give it to me. Like, what's up? And she's like, the faces, there's something about the faces. Like, I just want like that extra breath of life in the faces. And I was like, okay. So I did another like little habit stacking trick where my habit was to put my sketchbook in my bag every morning, so that when I was on my way back from dropping my kid off at school, different kid, I would pass by my coffee shop and I wanted to get a coffee. So I sat down and I would take out my sketchbook, and there's an app called Museum. It used to be called Sketchy, but it's now Museum. And people just upload selfies, and you can take any selfie and you can sketch it. And I would sit down, and maybe it was just the amount of time it took me to drink my coffee. And sometimes I got into it. I was there for 2 hours, but I just sat down and drew a face every day because I wanted,
Those are the like colored pencil drawing ones.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember seeing those, and I remember thinking, man, he got good so fast. Like I distinctly remember those. Yeah.
Thank you. I mean, yeah, and I mean, it also means, again, like, just to bring this down to reality, like, I wasn't working on like as many major deadlines as you were. I wasn't also trying to juggle so many other things. I had other work and I had other things I was doing, but I also had the time to do that. So, but I think that's a practice. That one specifically is one that almost anybody could fit into their day. Like there is a time when you're going to something or from something when you could stop for 10 minutes and put something into practice, whether it's sort of an I get to practice or a gratitude practice or a drawing practice.
Yeah. And in not to undefend myself, but the idea of like, oh, I don't have time because I'm too busy with my work. I have the time. I just haven't made it. I don't need to take every job, and I still do. Like I I'm making more than I'm spending. I could say no to this and invest that time in me. It's all those other reasons that I don't. This is an excuse. I'm too busy. I took too many jobs for whatever reason. So
Yeah.
like, but yeah.
Well, I mean, not to get too not to get too personal, but like it might be attached to that self-worth thing that we all struggle
Yeah,
with. Like
absolutely. Yeah.
I'm worthy if I'm doing this and I'm constantly doing this. I can't tell you what like a great liberation it was for me to like not have anything to post on it. Like I just didn't have it. Like I was dealing with shit that I had to deal with and I just couldn't. And now I'm looking back and now, and then I sort of was like, oh, I'll get back. And I'm realizing like nothing really like changed in my life in any drastic way doing that. And nothing really like I didn't lose anything from doing that. So like maybe I could start to make these choices that are more about me and less about, what's expected.
Yeah. Yeah. I think maybe the fear for me is this idea that it's all going to end one day and I need to do it now while I can. Like I just get every job I can while I can until nobody wants me, and then and then I'll be old and broke. But I
Yeah.
don't
Well, I mean, I
know.
also I know that you have a very like good relationship with your family as well. So you have found some way to balance that. There are many, many, many studies on end of life, and none of them say that anyone thinks it was a good idea to work more.
I know. I remind myself of that constantly. That I
Um,
really, it's one of my goals for this year is be better about all of that.
so I want to call you in a month, and I want you to tell me about a job you said no to. That's what I
That's
want.
actually, I've been good about it. I have been turning down jobs. It's not enough. I got to turn down more. The idea of calling me though, I wanted to bring that up because you mentioned several times that you have this group,
Yeah.
and we'll go over some of those things at the end. But I think that idea of accountability is incredibly important, and I think a lot of us don't have it. What would you recommend for in that regard? I think most artists I know have a group of artist friends. They're on an email list or something.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that can be it. That can be enough. Um, and I do have plenty of artist friends, and it's still like, uh, uh, and now I have like lots and lots of friends who are coaches, but it's not necessarily built in accountability. And I wasn't really looking for an accountability group, because that's also feels like an obligation. Like I've got to have something that I need to be accountable for. Sometimes I just like was on vacation and I just like that's just what was happening. Um, I think that, and again, I'm biased, but like I have a coach. I have a business coach. I've got a coach who helps me on like my actual coaching and business building. I'm in other groups that are focused on various things. Some of them, again, some of them are groups that I pay for. Some of them, are groups that I run. What I've again, what I said earlier, like what I've heard over and over and over again from people is, I'm making progress because I know there's somebody on the other side. Whether or not we meet all the time, it's really, really good to know that I can do this. And part of the reason that people feel like they can do it is because I am good at, and I am good at, and many coaches are good at creating a safe and a judgment-free space. I really want to emphasize that, because I've been parts of other groups of artists who I've liked and really appreciated and enjoyed, and felt some fear, right? Like some like, that person's really good. I don't want to send anything to the list. I want them to really like all these things. When you're in when you're sort of outside of the sort of general critique group, and you're really allowed to show up as you are, so much more gets done. The group that I run, the Unleash Creativity Club, if you go to unleashcreativity.club, you can get the free exercise and join the list for when we launch it again in June. And I'll have you put it in the notes. But we we are, oh, thanks. You put it in the chat. We are a group of creatives who happen to love science fiction and fantasy and want to do this kind of deep inner work. Because it is such a safe and judgment-free space, people want to be there. People want to be there because they can be themselves. And this is just what people have said. Like I asked people because I have a few people in the club who are like very successful artists. Like you would know their names and you'd be like, oh yeah, that person's killing it. And I'm like, why are you here? Like literally, why are you here? You don't need any help. What are you here for? And they're like, oh, because this when you say this is a non-judgmental space, like that's it. It truly is. And so a lot of that comes from whatever my background, but certainly from my training as a coach. And that's what I try to, when I work with artists too, like I try to bring as much of that to people as well. So your question was about accountability. What that creates is a natural natural kind of accountability. We do in the group have like an accountability check-in every week for anybody who chooses to participate. You don't have to, but if you're like, I'm working on something and I want to like let people know what I'm doing, you can do that. But oftentimes it's just knowing like, I'm going to go to we have a drink and draw group on Monday night that the members, can just, go to. And it's, sometimes it's just a place to just sort of unload some of the stuff that, been going on in your life or struggle with a painting. And sometimes you get ideas and sometimes you just get like people listening. One of the, again, for people who are in relationships or have kids, like one of the best phrases that I've ever learned is when someone's like kind of unloading on you is to say, do you want to be heard? Do you want to be helped? Or do you want to be hugged?
That's nice. Yeah, that's a good one. It's usually a hug. They just want to rant.
Usually it's a hug, right?
Yeah, I can't. The problem solver in me can't turn that off. People will come ranting to me, and I'll be like, "Here's what you should do." And I hate it. It's the worst answer.
Well, I know, but like, I have that too, right? So I like. So it's so much of this is about sort of noticing like, okay, I'm feeling a certain way. That must be the inner critic. Let me step out of the situation. Or I want to give this person a solution. Wait, I've got a question first.
Yeah.
And then they're like, I want a hug. And you're like, oh,
you want to be
okay.
heard? Do you want to be helped, or do you want a hug?
Yeah.
Heard, helped, hug. I like that.
I think it's great. And it can be a real game changer.
Should we move to these last two topics, Mark?
What are the last two? It's this one and healthy
and then healthy habits or healthy
Sure.
practices. Yeah.
This one I think is this one I can be brief about, but I think it's really important. One of my coaches, his name is Rich Liffin. He has this distinction, and I absolutely love it. And there's so many different ways to look at it, but he says that everybody who comes to me and wants to work with me as a coach or wants to be in the group, I say, what do you want? Always, always, always somebody wants more confidence. Like it's just always on the list. I want more confidence. I want to be more confident going out there. And I think that I need to do X, Y, and Z, and then I'll have confidence, or I need to have done this, then I'll have confidence. Sure. What Rich says, and again, I align with this, is that confidence is not actually a requirement for doing things. It is the result of doing things. What you actually need, what you need is courage to take, and we've talked about this a lot already, is the courage to take those small steps. It's the courage to buy a shitty little 3x5 and paint on it, even though it's not going to get you anything or go anywhere. It's the courage to make work that you intend to be ugly because you just want to learn the material. It's the courage to post something on social media that you haven't done before. It's the courage to reach out to whoever and say, I want to work with you, or I want to mentor with you, or whatever. These are so if you think about this in really practical terms, right? Like I love relating everything to jujitsu because it's amazing. But like it's confront. Like I decided to start training in this martial art. Now my kids were doing it, so I was familiar with the gym. So but I still like definitely had a lot of fear around going in there. Like I wanted to be good. And I wrestled before, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna look like an idiot. So it wasn't like a tiny thing, but I had the courage to say, okay, I'll take a private lesson, and then okay, that didn't feel terrible. All right, I have courage to take another one. Okay, okay, now I'm going to show up with the group. Okay, that takes a little more courage. Now I'm going to show up again. And I was only doing it like once a week, and then I was doing it twice a week. Then 3. Now I do it every day, and now I have a purple belt now, which is somewhere in the middle of the whole situation. So I'm not the best person in the room by a long shot. There's a lot of folks in there who smush me, but I'm so confident walking in. Not arrogant. I don't walk in thinking I'm going to crush everybody. That's not confidence. But I feel a sense that I belong, that I'm worthy, that
You
I
know what
love
you're
myself.
capable of. Yeah.
I know what I'm capable of. I know that, I know that I'm going to go in, I'm going to do some things with some people, and I'm going to leave, and I'm going to feel good. And I'm very, very confident that that's going to be the result. It's a lot about sort of, doing something enough times that you're like, okay, I'm not going to die.
Yeah.
Like,
I think confidence is going to come whether you want it or not. If you do things enough times, it's just a repercussion of that. I think the courage is the hard thing to muster up sometimes.
yeah. And I think with artists especially, there's a lot here around this. I think, a lot of artists put on or think if I put on confidence, it'll be better. It won't be. You'll still feel like how you feel inside, and you'll look like an arrogant whatever. It's okay to have fear and do something anyway. That's what courage is. That's literally that's the definition of what it is. Like,
Is doing it despite the fear.
yeah, feeling the fear and doing it anyway. I forget, maybe that was a book. But yeah, like that's at the same time, I want to say, like, you don't it takes courage also to step into a situation and not sort of hamstring yourself, so to speak. I think about like critiques a lot, where people get up and they're like, okay, this is what I did, it's like bad, bad. Well, that's your fear talking. That's your fear that people are going to say those things, so you're going to beat them to it and show how smart you are, and that you get it, whatever. It takes real courage to put a piece up on the wall and say, what do you think? And just wait. Like, it's really yeah, it does. It takes courage to listen to somebody if they're giving you feedback, or if they're telling you that you did something wrong or screwed up, or that you hurt them, even if you didn't mean to. Like, and okay, I just heard something, and not a scream, so I think it's okay. Yeah, but fundamentally, this is about finding a way to do something that takes a small amount of courage, and to do it enough that you feel absolutely confident, in doing it. Confidence also doesn't mean I'm really, really good at it. Like I said, I'm not the best person at the
I am
gym.
very confident in my inabilities. Like, yeah.
I'm confident in my ability to show up and try stuff and try again tomorrow. Like, when I tell people about my martial arts journey, it's certainly shifted over time, but for a long time now, like, absolutely 100%. My goal going in every day is to come back tomorrow. So whatever I have to do that, be respectful, treat my training partners well, respect my own body, like, tell people when to stop, like, not be a hero and like not tap out and have a broken foot.
Yeah. I think
Healthy
the
practice.
idea of training, I think, and you mentioned Greg Manchester a little bit. He also thinks a lot about
Yeah.
talent and stuff like that. And all of this stuff really does, like, rewiring your brain, rewiring your personality or your emotional response to things. All of this is training. It's absolutely,
Training.
yeah.
It's training. Yeah. And someone asked earlier, the person who may or may not be in South Jersey.
We're just being on South Jersey. I assume it's that hellhole.
Yeah, as a former Bostonian and now New Yorker, I think it's like I probably have to. But yeah, just it I forgot where I was going, but it is training. It is training. Yeah, we're training our mind. And so, like, when you think about, I want to be here, I want to paint like Greg Manchester, I want to be better at this, I want to feel better, I want to whatever, like, it doesn't happen overnight. It takes training. And that's where, so if you identify a vision, you identify a small step, now you have to have the small amount of courage, you have to do it repeatedly, the confidence will come, and things will change. They will change.
Change. This is paraphrasing Greg a little bit, who's done a lot of research on this notion of talent. But
Yeah.
there's, and I know you know this, but there's this thing called myelin sheathing in your brain. And basically, the
Yeah.
more you use a certain part of your brain, you develop this insulation that builds up that neuron. That little branch becomes a thick root. And so your brain keeps using that. That myelin sheathing that helps strengthen that part of your brain never degrades with time. And it's why the whole adage of, you, like, once you know how to ride a bike, you never forget how to ride a bike. I
Right.
think with a lot of these healthy and unhealthy practices, it's the same thing. You can never actually break a bad habit because of that process of bad habit means you built up so much sheathing around a certain pathway in your brain. You're just going to keep doing that. And the only way around a bad habit is to build a stronger habit. And that just takes deliberate practice and deliberate training. And eventually that habit will become so strong, your brain just stops using that other pathway. There's no getting
That's
rid
right.
of it or diminishing the old one. And I assume you encounter all this all the time with any type of training. It's physical training still, you know,
Yeah.
even these emotional things.
What you're saying is the mental practices are still physical practices
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
of how the brain works. Yeah.
Yeah, we have to train ourselves to have self-love every day, and eventually that'll hopefully become the habit, the default.
Right. And I think that like any, like any kind of training, it is a lifetime of practice. There are things like riding a bike that you never forget, and there are practices in this world that I live in that, you can do and also never forget. It's still important to keep doing them.
Yeah, you'll
Um,
get rusty.
you will get rusty. Like, I actually took my daughter for a bike ride today. I don't think she's been on the bike in a year, and it was a little wobbly at first, but came right back, like it
Yeah.
comes back. Um,
What other healthy practices can we do?
I feel like we've actually talked about a few of them. The phone one is a big one for me. Um, I think about this in terms of again, like in terms of really just aligning ourselves with our vision and our values and our purpose. So if we're thinking about the kind of person that we want to be, our practices, our healthy practices are going to come out of like, what are the things that I can be doing to actually, because a healthy practice for one person and one set of goals may not be for the other. Like my son is 13 now. He's doing a lot of weightlifting. Part of his healthy practices are making sure he gets like a billion calories a day and like, and tons of stuff. If his version of healthy practices on eating were mine, it would look very, very different.
Yeah,
Right. So I would advise against being like, well, that person's doing that, I should do it. It's really about what works for you. Don't not do anything. Do try things. Again, it's what are some healthy practices for me? A lot of mine are around just really mental, physical, and spiritual. If that's something that's a part of your life. So for me, the physical practice is my morning jujitsu. I like to get some of the physical stuff out of the way in the morning because usually by the end of the day, it's like a bigger lift to try to go and do something active. It's different for different people. I know people who are like, I go at lunch or I have to go at the end of the day to really get all that stuff out that I was like dealing with at work. But I think having at least one good physical, one good mental, and one good spiritual practice is for me at least is a good balance. One of the other, I mean, I have other practices that are not like every day, but I mentioned Shirzad Shamin and his positive intelligence program, and one thing that really, really works for me is, and I'll be honest, like I've had great meditation practices. I've done like a year, every day, and I've done all kinds of stuff. I don't have a great meditation practice. It's not something that I like have figured out, like how to make it really work for me. But some of the practices that he gives out look kind of a lot like that, but they're a little more active. I can share one with you. It takes 2 minutes.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm assuming it's less about turning your brain off and just being a little more deliberate about your thoughts. Yeah, please.
Yeah, it's one of the things that I love about jujitsu is that for me, it's both a physical and a spiritual practice because, and for obvious reasons maybe, but like when I'm in that room, 99% of the time, I am not thinking about anything else. I do not have my phone. Like no one can reach me. I'm not looking at my email. I'm not thinking about the project because if I do, someone's going to choke me. Like
Yeah,
if I like
you're
suddenly am
truly
spacing
present.
out, I am
Yeah,
truly, but I mean, it's not all about that. Like we're doing a lot of drilling and stuff, but yeah, I'm truly, truly present. And so when I found that, I was able to really, really, really connect with that practice as feeding those different aspects of myself. But one of the exercises that Shirzad has that I love a lot, he has these 2-minute exercises, and The one that I probably use the most is, again, when I start to notice I'm feeling heart racy or anxious, or I've been sitting and like bouncing back and forth between the same two tabs for 10 minutes and not doing anything on either. I'm like, okay, something, you need to ground yourself. Like, whether it's like literally just going outside and taking a breath, or doing an exercise like this one, which is, if you can, it's great to do outside, and you'll see why. Is you sit outside, or open a window, get some of the world in your face, and close your eyes. And the first thing he says to do is to take your, like, just one, like a thumb and a forefinger, and just with your eyes closed, try to see if you can feel like every ridge in the fingers, which I don't know anyone who can actually do that, but that's kind of the point. It's like, what's the sound of one hand clapping? You just like, okay, just try to feel all the ridges in your fingers, just for like a few breaths. And don't change your breath. Don't try to do any sort of deep breathing, but just allow your breath to happen as it naturally does. So for a few breaths, you're just doing this. And then you start to notice the sounds. And if you can, just allow all the sound to kind of come in at once, like just hear everything, the hum of the light, the birds outside, the wind in the trees or the buildings, the cars far away, like just kind of let it all come like a wash. And you're still kind of doing this. And then you start to, it's actually kind of happening now. Like you start to, again, just a few breaths. So this only takes 2 minutes. So you sit, you let it all come in as a wash. And then you see if you can notice like the furthest sound away from you. See if you can like kind of reach out and find that like distant hum, or a plane, or a car, or whatever. I live in a city, so different for different people. And just do that for a few breaths. Make sure you're breathing the whole time. Make sure you're keeping that energy kind of moving through your body. And then you come back, let things kind of wash back in again. And then you see if you can notice the closest sound. What is it? Is it your pants shifting? Is it your, computer, or dog, or, whatever? Just a few breaths. And then you come back. And some people like to, as they sort of come back to the world, like rub their hands together, create a little energy, create a little warmth, maybe kind of tap here, tap here. There's a whole tapping thing that it takes a little longer to explain, and then you come back, and it's 2 minutes. And it's 2 minutes. And I'm actually, like, even just having done it, not really doing it, even just sort of explaining it right now, like, even in this moment, I feel much more like here. And yeah.
That finger thing is a very old, it's like the listening mode when you meditate. Like it really does. It turns your body into input rather than output mode.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and it's also, yeah, it calms. I mean, there's just all this stuff about like the vagus nerve and the parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system. And the process of breathing is actually activating both systems, because the in-breath is activating the sort of the sympathetic, which is like the fight flight, and then there's the parasympathetic on the out-breath, which is the sort of calming, reductive. It reduces the cortisol, all that stuff. So as you're moving this energy through, it's like sort of integrating both of these things. And this is getting a little woo-woo, I know, but this really works. Like I'm like a very skeptical person on a lot of this stuff, but man, when you allow yourself just 2 minutes to do something like this, like it does really feel good. And if you're doing it regularly, I don't know. I think it's great.
Like, it's not too dissimilar, that old cliche of like, if you're unhappy, force yourself to smile. And this like physical
Right.
thing changes your mental thing a little
Right.
bit. And yeah, I'm sure calming your body and getting present probably diminishes those fears that are running through your head. Just once you calm your body, your brain probably follows.
Yeah, I'll tell you, when I was in 21, when I was really, really depressed, I was having some not too severe anxiety attacks, and they're terrible. Like if you've ever had one, folks, like it sucks.
Like every night.
But I had but I'm like, I know about this stuff. I've done all this research, so like I know that this is what happens when an anxiety attack or a panic attack starts to happen. So But sometimes you don't know that it's happening, right? Because it's anxiety, and it's just your brain being like, there's all these things to be afraid of, and they feel really real. So if I was ever in a state where I'm like, oh shit, I'm afraid of the whole world right now, I would look at my Apple Watch and I would check my heart rate, and inevitably my heart rate was up. And so I would do one of these exercises, I would bring my heart rate down, and I was definitely feeling much, much more capable and much better. Now, I am not a therapist. I am not a doctor. Don't think like if you have severe any of these things, you should 100% work with a professional to manage them. But for what I was dealing with, this was a huge help, just to connecting the emotional, the mental, and the physical. I think the best thing the artists can do for themselves is to have some sort of physical practice.
That's nice.
Yeah.
Mine is my recommendations are a little less woo woo, but I realize in retrospect, probably a lot of my practices are ways of me avoiding all of those other fears and things that I know are going to drag me down throughout the day. And so I've just found workarounds for them. One is that mantra, those mantras of playing rather than working, getting to rather than having to.
Excuse me.
I have a little bit of a ritual with my friends for accountability. If I have friends will come over to draw in my studio, and before we start drawing, like we kind of like pick an album we're going to listen to, we all go around the room and we say what we're going to do. Just that accomplishment. Like I'm just going to draw this, or I'm going to just do this, or practice that.
Yeah.
And then we start. I also have, in keeping with that play thing, I usually do, if I have to do any important sketching for a job, I try not to let that be my day's task and start off like I gotta be creative. Instead, I'll start it at the end of the day after doing my day's work, so I can do it just for fun, and it's okay if it was all bad and I wake up with nothing lost, you know?
There's actually a real I think there's a real reason why that works, and it actually has to do, I think, with brain science. And I again wrote another article about this: productive procrastination. So you get a job, you've seen the job, you've read the brief, whatever, you've got to go do some sketching. Now you go do something else, right? So you do whatever it is for the rest of your day, and then you come back to it. Now, whether it's garbage or not, what you've actually done is put your left brain, your getting things done brain, on other things. So what your right brain is actually doing in the background is going into something called default mode. And default mode is kind of like where the right brain connects ideas or thoughts or just experiences that you've had in new ways or unexpected ways. So I think it's obviously like you are a professional. I'm sure you could sit down and make, like, if someone's like, I need you to make a thing, I need you to make it right now, like you could sit down and do it. But for the rest of us mere mortals, it is valuable to, I think it's really valuable to get that thing, maybe even do a couple of noodle sketches like right away, and then give yourself a couple of days or a day or whatever it is to actually go do something else and think about other things, because your brain is still working on that problem.
That's funny. It actually works in reverse as well quite a bit. I think when I am deep into painting, I think I know a lot of artists that do this. If I am deep, deep into painting, I'm talking hours in, I am so right brain that my left brain goes into default mode, and it'll just start cycling over crappy thoughts, harmful thoughts, like old things that people did 20 years ago, things I have to get done, and it just goes on repeat. And I'm not actually thinking about it, but it's this nagging voice in my head while I'm painting. And I realize it's because my left brain isn't engaged at all in the easy things. And I need to take a break, and I need to go do something left brain sometimes. And then it helps repress that a little when I go sit back down.
Okay, that's really interesting. I love that. I have to go read more about that.
I think it's actually really, I hear from a lot of artists like that they have toxic thoughts run through their head. And I've heard weirdly a lot of survival stories, like when people are really like on the verge of famine and crawling, like trying to survive, that it's weird nagging voices in the back of their head that keep them going. Like your brain starts just cycling stuff like in this weird, just goes on loop. But I don't doubt it plays a role.
I think we're all whether it's exactly that or some other, I mean, I know a lot of us, especially if you're actually dealing with some sort of, mental health thing. I took medication for anxiety for some number of years, so I'm familiar with it. But that concept of looping, it's really, really hard. And sometimes you do honestly go get professional help if you can. Like it is helpful, but having some of these practices, and even just noticing, I forget it. It's this thing. It's called RAIN, and I forget what it stands for, but it's like recognizing, allowing something. I'm gonna forget the other two, but that first step of like, oh, it's happening. It's happening right now. Like this is what's happening right now. Okay. I'm not going to like think my way through this. I'm not going to like ignore my way through this. What do I need to change in this moment? Do I need to change my back to the neurological levels? Do I need to change my environment? And sometimes that is the answer. Go outside, go outside and like, hug a tree.
Cool. Marc, this has been awesome. This is great. I wish we could do this more. I feel like we could keep going on too, but
I'm happy to come back, but this has been great to talk. I mean, it's great to just talk to you in general anyway. So
yeah, it's always nice too. You want to tell us places we can go to learn more about you if we wanted to receive coaching or just read up on more stuff?
Sure.
Some resources for us?
Yeah, I mean, you reached out because I just was a contributor to a book that just came out about living with intention. I wrote the first chapter of the book, so I get to kind of introduce the book, which is kind of an honor. And the chapter, no surprise, is called living with purpose, and it walks through some of the stuff that we talked about today. But I give some very specific exercises. I think the whole book it's all expert coaches in different areas, so they're all offering all of these different tools. And I was very, very glad to be invited to do that. I think for the Muddy Colors community, oh, you got a picture, yeah. I think for the Muddy Colors community, especially folks who are into, sci-fi, fantasy, imaginative realism, and are creatives, I do have this group, this membership group called the Unleashed Creativity Club. We are going to be opening our doors right now. Oh, did I say June? That was a lie. It's going to be July. Because no, like June's tomorrow. We are.
Don't remind me.
I know. Talking about deadlines, all my deadlines are self-imposed, and this is what it looks like.
I know.
But it is. I mean, I say this. I say this as humbly as I can. It is a truly fantastic community, and I say it humbly because I didn't make it that. Like, we have some really wonderful people in there. I go in there, every day. People are talking about a lot of the stuff that we've talked about today. So. I'll ask people questions in there. I'll engage with people on there. We have it's on an app called Heartbeat, and there's these community sort of break rooms, and almost every day people are in there kind of in the middle of the day, like co-working. And then we've got one of the members actually runs a business building workshop every couple of weeks. If you're interested in that, we've had members, give talks on. We have some folks who are in in design and marketing. So they gave a talk on how to do your social media and how to, we even like a little bit about how to run ads. And so it's a really great community. It's quite small right now. It's about 20 people in there right now because we've previously you had to take the course that I created, this 12-week course that was also called the Unleashed Creativity Club. We are going to try something a little bit different, and we're going to see how it works. We're creating sort of a 3-week version of the course for a lot less cost than the other course, and so it's less money and less time. So hopefully easier for people, so that when you join the membership, a lot of the stuff that I've been talking about today, like we actually do these things and we work on it. My goal is to make this actually easy to fit into people's days. Like I said before about all these practices, like I don't really want people spending more than 15-ish minutes on any one assignment. Like for the most part, it's read something and write something in a journal or post on the community. And I hope for most people that takes about 15 minutes, so that you can have this. It's about habit building, right? You can have this repetitive practice that you're coming in, you're engaging in this work. But again, like I was sort of blown away. I didn't initially create this as a membership. I just created this course, and then the Erica Lynn Schmidt, who's my community manager, also a great sculptor and painter, she and I decided to kind of open it up as a membership, and we were like, what are we even going to do? And it's sort of just grown and sort of become obvious what we do. And like I said, I've asked people, and people, there's a lot of reasons people come here, but what every single person says is like, this is really the space where I can be my absolute, like, all you see a lot of me online, but this is where you get like the extra 20% that, or 10% that's like actually, you know, all the things that are going on with me. And people have brought some real stuff. Like, you know, you don't have to show up and talk about, you know, things that are, it's not therapy. Like, I'm not a therapist. You don't have to, it's not about that. But people have come with some really personal, you know, things. And somebody was just saying the other day, like, they went through some really hard stuff with family. And they're like, it was this group that I knew that I had, that I could talk to and just share this stuff with, that made it like possible for me to get to the better side of that. So I'm very, very grateful for the folks in the community. And if you're interested, you can go to Unleash Creativity Club, unleashcreativity.club. You can read a little bit about it. You can sign up for the notification list.
Awesome. Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
We have some thank yous in the comments, but guys, thank you for your questions. They were wonderful. Marc, thank you for your time. This is fantastic.
Yeah. Thanks everybody for coming and for the good questions and comments and everything. Yeah.
Yep. And I'm sure a simple Google search of your name will find all your social media and all that stuff.
Oh yeah, I mean, Marc Scheff Coaching. So if you search Marc Scheff, you get the coaching and the art. But Marc Scheff Coaching on almost all the platforms is me.
Fantastic. All right. Thank you all. Take care. Marc,
Thanks everybody.